unfortunately, some of the garments that we got from just they don't fit right. Like
this
this
was years ago.
Years ago. Yeah, my crotch was at my knees. Like I can't. It doesn't.
Not in a good way. Yeah,
not in a good way.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, it's almost food plot season, Jared, and Deer Grow is one of those products that has really changed the way that we plant food plots and the success we've seen from them.
No doubt. I've been, trying to plant food plots my entire whitetail hunting career, which is a little shorter than yours. But the minute that I started, or that I realized that I could get Deer Grow back into some of these remote plots where I couldn't get lime or fertilizer, especially in the 50-pound bag, format. Mm-hmm. So everything was changed. I could get into these spots moving forward with a backpack sprayer, and that's since escalated to these 40 or 60 gallon sprayers, and we're doing upwards of 5 to 10 acre food plots just with Deer Grow and having phenomenal success.
Yeah, and I mean with the price of fertilizer, lime, diesel, everything this year, I mean what better way to get in there and grow a successful food plot at about a third of the cost? Check out Deer Grow at deergrow.com. And we're back.
Hey,
HUNTR Podcast, episode 93. The year Jared was born.
Yeah, yes, it was.
We just discussed this. So
3393.
3393.
Easy to remember.
It is.
In case anybody's looking for a birthday gift for me.
Probably not. It's September 8th. September 8th.
Yeah.
But you're listening to this, I think we said like the 23rd or something, or 30th.
Yeah, mid-September.
Like yeah. Late September, I think.
Late September.
Yep. And washout in Kentucky last weekend. Not the greatest.
Yeah.
Got some things done that needed done, but we were in their wheelhouse, man. Just every night they'd come in about 35, 40 minutes after dark until, what was that, Tuesday night I sent you the pictures?
The next night.
2 nights later.
Oh, you weren't out Monday night?
No, we came home Monday. So it was Tuesday night, and like clockwork, there they are, daylight.
They were scouting you out. They were sitting in their car drinking coffee, eating French fries, waiting for you to leave, and then...
So, yeah, I mean... It was fun.
They were both in there. So he hunted for like 2 nights and then left. And then the following night,
they were
both in there in broad daylight.
Yeah, 20 yards from the blind. The weather, the first night was rough. I mean, it rained really heavy that day, kind of let up, but was just misty and nasty that evening. We didn't see anything. And then the next day, they said it wasn't going to rain during the whole evening. From the moment we got in the blind at like 5:30, 6 o'clock till dark, it rained, poured whole time. And to be honest, even if those bucks came out, I don't think I would have let the kids shoot because, like, I have a pretty big pet peeve about shooting in the rain with archery equipment.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's risky.
Yeah, so I don't know. We weren't going to get out of the blind, but I don't necessarily know if I would have let them shoot because of that. I was just hoping any minute it was going to let up, and it didn't. So we got some cameras reset. One of the food plots looks baller, looks great. The one that we were hunting had, I assume they're just hammering the beans in there, but there was a lot of weeds. We talked about this before. Some seed beds I think are just loaded with weeds, and with the amount of rain we've gotten in these places, it just takes them over. So I nuked that food plot, and then I seeded in some oats and winter peas.
Cool.
So hopefully, but then I got rain 2 hours later, so I'm hoping the Roundup took effect. As long as it dried, it should be good.
I don't know. I'm not sure what the window is.
I think the rain fast window is if it dries.
Rain fast? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, you're good. Like once it dries, then you're okay. And actually rain basically activates it for the plants to pull it through their pores. So you don't want like a downpour, I think, right after because that will wash it off. But
Gotcha.
So I don't know. So we'll see. I'll keep an eye on the food plots. But yeah, other than that, man, pretty uneventful opening weekend.
Did the other night. I just let the dogs out before we go to bed, and let them out, and then went to bed. It was like 5 a.m. It was still dark out. I hear this freaking dog barking at my house.
What the hell?
And I was just like, "What is going on?" Like, and I look out, and I think I see like a dog barking at our house. I'm like, "Uh oh."
Yeah.
I get downstairs, crate doors are open. I had never let them in. I just left my dogs out all night. Yeah, they were.
And you don't have a fence, like
they're just running. No, they were for sure. I mean, Gunner looks like he had been. Came from a rave or something. He was. Yeah. They were having a good time tearing up the neighborhood.
Gunner's fixed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Buckley.
I didn't even consider that.
Buckley's out there breeding like a madman.
Yeah. Most other people are pretty responsible for their dogs.
He came back.
Making up for my irresponsibility.
Turn off, I'm dry.
Dude, but Buckley's like a rutting buck at all times. Like it's
well, I mean, you got him all penned up with that.
Daddy's all pent up. Yeah,
he's got it all built up in there. So yeah, I'm sure he had a blast. I don't know what kind of crosses you're going to be producing out in that neighborhood.
Skunk or something. The other night they had a groundhog cornered in my yard, like in the middle of the night. It was like 10 o'clock. We were getting ready to go to bed, and same thing. They're barking. I go out, and I'm like, what's going on? And there's a groundhog, like, they've got him cornered.
Hey, little fella.
Yeah. Hey, buddy.
Oh, man. All right, so you're leaving on an elk hunt next week.
We're within a week.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, you're probably back or coming back at this point.
Yep.
We talked about that in one of the last, I think, 2 podcasts ago.
Yeah.
We kind of went through your gear, and so when you come back, we're going to do a recap of that hunt. But for most people listening to this, if you're in Ohio, I think season probably is just opening. If you're in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, I think a bunch of these states are, like, we're just opening bow season. So we figured, like, let's bring in a guest that's going to get everybody fired up for bow season. So we got Mr. John Eberhart back. And, what better way to kind of lean into the bow season opener than with a guy who, probably has been bow hunting longer than both of us have been alive, I would say.
Yeah, seen a lot of seasons.
Mm-hmm. And so we're going to kind of pick John's brain on a few things here and talk about what he's got prepped for the opener in Michigan and, what some of his strategies are. And then, maybe dive into a couple other topics while we got him.
Cool.
Let's bring John in.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good morning.
Doing
sheds.
Good. Yeah, look at that, huh?
Nice pile of sheds.
Pretty much none of them from Pennsylvania. This one was. But everything else was from Kansas, I believe.
There's not as many as they're just big sheds.
Big Kansas sheds.
Hoping to catch up with this one this year.
Wow. That's a dandy.
That's a public deer.
Crap.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep, that's a public deer.
6, 7, 8. Whoa.
Split brow tine.
This guy was also a public deer.
Where was that from?
Kansas.
It's not fair, is it?
No, it's not, isn't it?
We're almost worried to tell you because we know you're going to tell us how easy it is.
Yeah, well, I mean...
While we're striking out year after year.
Easier. It's never easy.
Well, yeah, easier. I mean, the funny thing is... Well, in most of those, and again, it's not knocking anything in the Midwest. Like, it's deer hunting. Nothing's ever planned out. But, if you get to, a state like Kansas, especially in that late October, November time period, and you set up in some of these funnels on public land, I mean, odds are you're going to see a bigger deer there than you probably will see in, any of the other states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, wherever that you're hunting. Like, it's just, they make big bucks out there. And it's because they get old. That's it.
You said probably?
Definitely. Yeah.
Well, 100% guarantee.
Yeah. Well, John, you guys hunt Kansas, right? I think I saw a video of you and your sons hunting out there. Was that last year?
Yeah, last year.
Yeah. Did you guys draw this year?
We did.
You did? Good for
We're
you.
geeked, man. We're ready to go again. Yeah, we all shot nice. We all shot really good bucks last year.
Nice.
Yeah.
What part of the state are you guys in?
We are in northern central. We're about a half hour south of Nebraska.
Yep.
Pretty much center of the state, east-west, maybe a little bit farther west. So we're out in the plains area.
Gotcha.
Not the green part, not the ag part to the east.
Yep. So that's where we're down southeast corner.
Coffee County.
Yeah.
Flint Hills.
Greenwood. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's just like anywhere. I mean, it's not a gimme, right? But I guess, John, do you use how do you alter your techniques from Michigan and apply them to Kansas? When you're going out there.
You guys, so this is your first time to Kansas?
No, we've been there for 9. I've been there 9 years.
And this will be my
third or fourth.
This will be my fourth. But 6th year we've been putting in.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't draw last year or a couple years ago.
I never want to say it's easy, but it's far easier than where you guys typically hunt.
Sure.
Let's put it that way, because there's so many more mature bucks. I have never been to Kansas where I could not have shot a 125. I usually try to, when I start, I
That's because all the 2-year-olds are 125 inches out there.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. You see them all the time.
Yeah.
I can remember one year I saw 18 different PNYs in a week.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't see. I've had 3 years go by here in Michigan without seeing one PNY buck.
100%.
Yeah, and I'm sure you see the same thing in PA. So I'm sorry. The question was, what do I do?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've got a very definitive plan, like for the Michigan opener coming up and stuff. But when you guys go out to Kansas, like how do you take that same kind of mindset and apply it to, what is basically a completely different landscape?
We totally drop our guard when we go to Kansas. So I'm very cautious putting cameras out in Michigan because visits are intrusive. Now with cell cameras, it's not that bad. I put out 4 cell cams yesterday, Exodus cams, and we actually put a cell cam the last 3 times we've been to Kansas at every single hunting location. When we usually have about 11 to 12 trees prepped for 3 guys, and we totally hunt by what we get on the cameras. Now, even prior to the cell cameras in Kansas, we would actually put cameras at every location, and we would go visit them every day and pull the cards. We'd swap the cards out, and it did not seem to affect movement because the deer they seem oblivious to human intrusions. Like, I shouldn't say oblivious, but more so than like Michigan or PA or New York or Virginia, where there's a lot of hunting pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's just not a lot of hunting pressure. And so we set up in either pinch points or at scrape areas.
Yep.
And typically where we're at, because we're farther west, there's not a lot of timber. So you get these draws, these old floodplains draws, and they could be 50 to 100 foot deep from the flat ag area. And it's kind of weird. You'll look across a section or 2 sections, and you'll see the tips of these trees out maybe a half a mile from the road. And you go out there and they're 120 foot tall cottonwoods coming up out of these draws. And in these draws, that's where, if there's ever any moisture, that's where everything runs off into. And there's weeds, there's hemp, there's plum brush. It's just excellent security cover for that type of an area. It wouldn't be good security cover for Michigan. They'd all get killed because it's not heavy security cover like a swamp.
Sure.
But it's the best security cover they have. So you just set up in the pinch points in those draws, because that's the only place they have to transition through with any security cover during daylight hours. So where we're at, I'd say 80 to 85% of the land is either open prairie or it's in crops, and 15% of the land is in security cover. So the security cover is so small, the deer during the daytime are very condensed, and they travel those draws, and it's just really easy. It's actually easier than hunting eastern Kansas, in my opinion, because eastern Kansas has a lot more timber.
Sure.
So deer tend to wander more in big timber.
Here, I'll try to make an analogy. I don't know if it'll come out right or not, but like, was it the Native Americans that would, make fish traps essentially that would push fish out of the main river into smaller pools, and they were easier than at that point to spear. The Midwest seems to just, in its nature, because of, like you said, how limited the habitat, or like the places they feel comfortable moving during daylight hour, the security cover, they become, you have much less to cover.
Sure.
It's easier to pick a spot. It's basically like, hey, listen, they can only come through a handful of spots here. That's the one. So, John,
I guess my question, and obviously, anybody who hunts Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio, Michigan, whatever, hears you saying like, yeah, we're going in and checking these cameras before cell camera days all the time. Like, that's a huge no-no in our area, right? Like, we blow every freaking deer out from, in a square mile radius. Yep. When you guys are doing that in Kansas, though, are the bucks that you guys end up harvesting usually captured on those cameras? Like, you're hunting then a specific deer in that area?
100%.
Huh.
100%. We are totally hunting. Even when we did the SD card where you had to go to each spot, I mean, usually we have one 4-wheeler. I have my minivan. My sons both have 4-wheelers, so we would physically drive right up to the camera and well, 20 yards sometimes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because you can drive down the edges of these crop fields and you just walk down into the draw, where some of the draws you can drive through the draws. And we would pull cards and check them. And if there was a buck there that morning, this was always midday when we're checking cameras, pulling cards. We'd go sit there the next morning. Or if there was a buck there the evening before, we'd sit there that evening, even though we were just there doing a card. You would never do that.
No,
that is the truth, man.
No way.
Dude, the way that I think about it is like all these northeastern states is like, we piece together a plan in our heads and we're like, okay, these, fence lines come together here, or this funnel is going to work because of this. And like so many times I think we think it's going to work and then it doesn't. We go and hunt it and it doesn't pan out. It seems like that same thought process when applied to a state like Kansas, and I can't speak to Iowa. I've never hunted there, but some of these other Midwestern states, and I'll make a comment too. It seems like the further like west you go, the more like this it is, even for mule deer. I think
like in the Dakotas and stuff.
The Dakotas, yeah. Those deer just like they do what they're supposed to do. Like this thought that we have of like they're going to do this because this is this way.
Sure.
In the Northeast, it seems like so many times that doesn't happen because it's like they caught your wind or they'd been pressured and now they're doing something different or food source is different. Out there, like the percentage of that panning out the way you thought it would be seems to just be higher.
Well, and I would assume it's all circled around hunting pressure, right? I mean, that
100%.
is the commonality. If you look at what Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, like all these states have, that frankly Kansas, Iowa, and the Dakotas don't have, it's hunting pressure, period.
Yeah, maybe.
It's probably parcel.
That's not a maybe, Jared. That's 100%
pressure.
Hunting pressure is more important than anything else. Everything revolves around hunting pressure. The more pressure there is, the less mature bucks move during daylight, the more deeper into the security cover they are going to be during daylight hours. And out there, there's so little hunting pressure. There's so many mature bucks. The rut is so competitive. They respond to rattling. They respond to decoys. They respond to just about anything. And because they don't have a house every 300 yards down the roads, there may be 5 miles between homes. But the farmers, they're always driving around in their quads. They drive down through the draws and stuff, fix fences and stuff, but there's never any negative consequences to the deer, when there is that human activity. So, they can spook deer with their trucks and quads and tractors, and they just go back to doing the same thing. So when you go check a camera, they just come right back in the very next day. I mean, they have a very routine, but it's very common out there to get a picture of a buck in a draw in one spot, and the next day get a picture of that same exact buck 2 miles away in the same draw. Because those draws run for miles and miles and miles.
Yeah.
They just run through those draws trying to intercept whatever estrus does there may be. And we always go post, so we always go after the peak run.
Okay. So do we.
Yeah, we're usually leaning on the edge of it.
That makes me feel a little better about there's a spot on public down there that I've really clung to, and recently here we've got a cell camera, and we've seen some, I don't know if they're DNR guys or
I think it's the
neighbors
cattle guys fixing fences.
And I mean it's back in there like I can't believe they're back there, honestly.
Yep.
But I'm not too worried about it. Like I think, by the time week before November or week before Thanksgiving rolls around, which is when we'll be there, I don't think it's going to have really any impact on how they're cruising through there.
I think, like John said, even with those guys in there's no negative impact to the deer by them being there fixing the fence.
Yeah.
Like that, it just isn't. And we usually have cameras there, maybe not 12 months of the year running, but 9. And we rarely see any other hunters back there.
Yeah.
Like very, very rare.
Well, that's the other thing we said too, is this is the first year we've got the camera actually on the fence line. And so it's entirely possible that these past 3 to 5 years that we've been hunting it, they were in there doing that fence work and we just never knew it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I think
those farmers out there, they're repairing fences and stuff all the time, but there's no negative, like you said, no negative to the deer. And it's good that you have that mindset out there, because when I first started hunting out west, I went with the same mindset that I hunt from Michigan. Everything, I assumed it was going to be similar. And it didn't take me long to find out it wasn't similar. It was much easier because there's so many mature bucks and there's so little hunting pressure. And it just got to the point where we just dropped our guard 100%, just did the natural thing, like the TV guys do. You can look at on their private, big managed properties, they can look at an aerial and find a pinch point because there's no hunting pressure. Nothing's going to affect that pinch point other than them. And they can set up in that pinch point and do really well. You can't do that. You can't go Google an aerial on public land in PA or West Virginia, find a pinch point, and assume nobody else is going to have that all screwed up for daytime activity. So, it's good to go with that mindset, though, that you have, because when you know how to kill deer in a PA or a Virginia and you're hunting some public lands and stuff, it just makes it that much easier out there. You just have to drop some of that guard because those deer will move in areas during daylight hours, deer where you hunt one.
It is crazy, dude. That 8-point, I've only killed one buck out there, right? Yeah, I've only killed one buck out there. It's like a 140-inch 8-point, probably a 4-year-old. It was my best deer at the time, and that deer came from dead downwind, and I know he caught my wind. I saw 100%. Him pick his nose up, and then he decided, it's fine.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
Yeah, I'm going anyways.
Well, and the reason you were in there, because this was what, the next to the last day, I think, that we were in there for hunting?
Yeah, I had hunted it for like 6 days straight.
Well, and he had been on this pattern. It was an old railroad track bed, and he would get up on this railroad track bed, and there was a couple scrapes on it, but he would work this back and forth between north to south, between the two properties. And we knew he was kind of on that pattern, and so that's why you stuck it out. And damned if that's not how you killed him. He got right up on that bed, walked in, and again, it was the only tree that we could make it work for that situation. You were basically eye level with that deer because the tree sat down and the railroad bed was up high.
Right.
You were almost eye level. It was all the things that back home we would have been picked out miles before.
Yeah.
Yeah. The odds of that deer where you're at in PA not turning inside out to get the hell out of Dodge.
We would have never even seen him.
100%.
He would have caught our wind far before we would ever laid eyes on him and hightailed it out of there.
Well, it was worse than that. I had rattled that deer into the set earlier in the week and almost got a shot at him, and I think he ended up kind of boogering or whatever, and
he didn't see anything.
He didn't see anything, and then the morning that I killed him, I saw him at first light. And I grunted at him, and so he's well aware that there's something happening in that bottom. That it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
And then later in the morning, he was going back to bed, and even though he smelled me, he says, I'm going. That's where I'm going. There's no other way to get there, so that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
And like you said, I killed him eye level at 15 yards.
It's crazy.
I just watched the TV.
Well,
I just watched a TV show the other day, which I rarely watch TV, but the more I watch them, the sicker I get at it. And this guy shot at this buck. I think it was in Kansas, actually. It was on a lease. He shot at this buck, and he missed it at 20 yards, and he was hunting over a pile of corn. And that buck ran out about 20, 30 yards farther behind some brush and stood there and looked at the guy in the tree. And then he walked off. The guy tried to run him back in, which was stupid to try and run a deer in that you just missed. And the deer's looking at you in the tree. That buck came right back the next day. He shot it. I mean, it's just, it's. I mean, I feel like if I spook a deer in Michigan, that tree to me is compromised for that year for that deer.
Yeah.
That deer is not going to come by that tree in the daytime. He may go by it, but he's not going to come, if it's an oak with acorns, he may come feed at it at night.
Sure.
He ain't going to come back.
Well, I think it's, a lot of guys hear us say it's easier, and that's just the term that we're applying. It's not necessarily a negative. It's pretty freaking cool. I mean, case in point, we're all going to Kansas this year to experience that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Man, how awesome is it that you can go in, get aggressive, get away with stuff you never would otherwise, and maybe kill a giant buck?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
When I took my dad out there, I think it was the first year he was there. And this is a guy who hunted his entire life in Pennsylvania, never hunted out of state. Pennsylvania is all he knows, right? We put him in a stand in Kansas, and one morning there were 8 different bucks chasing a single doe, and probably 3 of those were well over Pope and Young, and he's like, what kind of place is this? But it's because you hear people, and again, go back to the TV side of things. You know, you watch these things and you're like, man, that's not real. Like that never happens.
Exactly.
We never see it.
It's exactly what I was saying earlier. It's like even our dads had gone in with that mindset of, oh, this setup's going to work. And it rarely does. You know, it doesn't pan out. The deer's not there, whatever. And so to go to Kansas and have all of your wildest dreams that you've had for 30 years fulfilled in a single morning in Kansas is like, where has this been my whole life? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I felt when I went out there and I was only 20 or something.
It's, I mean, you know, I've got we talked about it the other day. I think, you know, 4 of my 5 biggest bucks have been from Kansas. No surprise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just what it is.
It's interesting how the guys from out there perceive the eastern states. I was talking to Cameron. What's Cam's last name? Cameron Coble yesterday for a while. We're going to have him on a podcast here. So he's from southern Iowa, and he was asking me about, like, Ohio. He's like, what do you think is better, like Kansas or Ohio? And I'm like, it's interesting
to hear him say
that. I mean, this guy breathes deer. You know, he's constantly studying the record books. He's a Boone and Crockett official scorer and stuff. And a lot of Boone and Crockett deer have come from Ohio, and so I think having not hunted it, he's like, well, like, what do you think? Like, is Ohio seems like way up there, and he's not wrong. I mean, they do kill a lot of Boone and Crockett. We've killed some nice deer out of there, but it's a very different thing for a lot of reasons. The main one we talked yesterday was, I think, topography. Yeah, I think deer have a ton of advantages in the Northeast. The 2 that come to mind is exposure to pressure, which makes them harder to kill. That John's obviously going to agree with that one. They're familiar with how to get away and survive hunters.
Yeah, those older bucks have been through the ringer. They know where they need to go to be secure.
And 2, and maybe it's just a subsequent of that, is the topography, the terrain gives them a major advantage when it comes to thermals and access and line of sight, as opposed to in the Midwest. It's pretty easy to kill a deer on flat land where they have no thermal advantage or can't see you coming.
Well, I mean, all 3 of us, I think, would agree. One of the things that I've noticed the most about Kansas,
again, relative,
is when they're, you know, I mean, there's almost every day there's a 20+ wind blowing out of some direction, right? The days where there is very little wind, those deer don't move at all.
Yeah.
Like I don't see anything moving in Kansas. Whereas normally, you know, when it's blowing,
like Jared said, you don't get the swirls and the thermals out there because everything's flat.
Exactly, just straight through. Yeah, we're normally.
I mean, I don't pay attention to wind, as you guys well know.
Yeah,
I feel for you guys because I did what you do for 35 years.
Yeah. Well, and it's not even that, John, as much as it is like, you know, I use my ears probably more than my eyes when I'm hunting, right? I'm a very here. I go out to Kansas and it's blowing 35 miles an hour. I'm holding on to the tree. I'm not hearing anything, you know? And so it's just, it always.
You're just hoping you can draw your bow back by the time they come in.
You know, play the lean as the wind's blowing me. But it seems very strange that is a very natural movement in weather conditions for those deer. Whereas if it was blowing 35 back home in Pennsylvania, those deer aren't moving at all. They are locked down, you know, and it's just, that's the way that it lays out.
Because when you get a heavy wind in a northeastern state, you got a lot of movement. So a deer's visual and a deer's hearing is pretty much worthless.
Yep.
And they are just uncomfortable with all that movement. Now, you get out west where you've got a lot of winds. I can remember I shot one of my bigger bucks in Illinois on public land 2 days after gun season ended in mid-December. 35-mile-an-hour winds. Wind chill was like 20 below zero. And I shot a monster 12-point. And he was moving in the wind. I saw 5 bucks that night.
Yeah.
But it was out west. You know, southern Illinois. You get to southern Illinois and you go Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska, the Dakotas, parts of Missouri. I mean, those are all anomaly states that just have monster big bucks and very minimal hunting pressure. You know, I can remember, I'm a sales rep and I'm retiring at the end of this year from that job. And I rep for Quaker Boy.
Yep.
And this kind of goes hand in hand with deer. But there's so many videos. There were so many coyote videos where they were filmed west of the Mississippi River. And basically, you know, every 2 or 3 calls out of 5 or 6, you have something come in.
Yep.
And it got to the point where the stores in, you know, where I'm at in Michigan wouldn't even carry a coyote video, call video, if it was made in Kansas or Iowa or Nebraska. They wanted videos that were only made east of the Mississippi River where there's hunting pressure, because coyotes are exactly the same.
Yeah.
You can go out there and call coyotes with no problem. I can remember a guy shot over 150 coyotes. He lived in Iowa and he hunted in Kansas and Iowa. And he shot over 150 coyotes. And he moved to Michigan because he married a girl that worked at a sporting goods store up here. And he thought he was going to do something similar to that in Michigan. He shot one coyote in a full season.
Wow.
A full winter of calling coyotes. He shot one and it had the name.
I've said this on the podcast before, John. I've got some family in Montana, and just to paint a picture of how different these places are, that country is so vast out there, and the coyotes are so plentiful. They just run them over with snowmobiles. They don't even even go with calls. They're just like, there's one a mile away, and they just run it down and run it over.
Wow.
And they'll kill dozens of them like that every year. They do big voyages of a dozen sleds, and they're, hey, let's head to Billings. And
I think using dogs, they use snowmobiles.
Well, those snowmobiles will go 90, 100 miles an hour. These coyotes have no chance.
Jeez. And I think we brought this up last time with John. And it's not in a cocky way, right? But I do think that there's a strategic advantage to anyone growing up hunting Pennsylvania, Michigan, New York, Wisconsin, etc. Then you go to these states that have complete opposite of hunting pressure that we see. And I think that, you probably are overly cautious the first time you hunt it because you're trying to apply the same skill set and the same strategy that you've been used to hunting your whole life. But quickly you can adapt and say, well, damn, this isn't nearly as hard as what I'm dealing with back home. Flip it around, like you just said in the coyote situation, John. This is what Kansas and Iowa people, and I'm not picking on them, but bring them to Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Michigan, and ask them to do the same thing. It's not happening.
Yeah. I feel sorry for a lot of those guys out west because they don't know any different. I mean, when I wrote my books, pretty much every time I talk to anybody out west, they don't know anything different than what they're hunting.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't comprehend how some states in the East can be more difficult than where they're at. They just can't comprehend that because they think they're hunting pressure too.
Yeah.
So until they actually do it, which they're not going to do, they're not going to see somebody from Kansas go to PA to go deer hunting.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen unless it's with a family for a social event.
Yeah.
So,
and here, John, if I can shed light on that too, because if I heard that and I was a Midwestern hunter, I would take offense. It would be my first response would be like, well, what do you mean? It's not obviously not their fault. I think what Jeremy and I have come to realize is in a lot of different aspects of life and hunting is it really is the difficulties and the struggles and so for us, just the fact that we live here in a high pressure state and don't have access to huge bucks riding like crazy all the time. And that sucks 90% of the time. But when we do get to go out and participate in something like a Kansas whitetail rut hunt, it's it's beyond our wildest dreams, whereas if we lived in that environment 365 days out of the year, it's just kind of another day. Mm-hmm. And so we've had to just change our perspective and say the way we look at it is that, in that same respect, I do feel bad for those Midwestern guys because it's just kind of a weird way to say it. They don't get to experience those.
Yeah.
The
difficult times.
It goes back to one of our past discussions we had. I don't know if it was a podcast or two ago, John, but we discussed, I don't know how to say it without sounding rude. We've discussed how nobody's ever really been labeled the best whitetail hunter. Because
you can never label that. That's impossible.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm saying is because you hear it thrown around and listen, there's some very good whitetail hunters. We're talking to one. John Eberhart is one of these guys. But I can't compare you to Don Higgins who lives and hunts in Illinois and Iowa. Right? It's two completely different beasts.
Relative.
Yeah, what your success looks like in a Michigan compared to what Don's looks like in an Illinois, maybe on the same playing field, but from a number standpoint, if I'm talking purely from a score standpoint or whatever, it's not the same playing field, right? Because
no.
So
it's like when you're I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine, John. Go.
It's kind of like when you're the only person hunting a property. It's like if I were the only quarterback in the NFL at my size, 160 pounds, I'd win the MVP every year. I'd be the best quarterback in the NFL.
Yes.
Or if I was the only guy in a swimming match, throw Michael Phelps out of the question. If I was the only swimmer in a competition, I would win every freaking time.
Yeah.
So anytime you are the only one, if you can't do something against competition, there's no way of rating your skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely none. All competition or all skill sets should be based on what type of competitive situation you're in.
Yeah.
Because none of these pro athletes, the icons, Mickelsons, the LeBron Jameses, the Michael Jordan, Mickey Mantle, Michael Phelps, Tom Brady, they grew up swimming or playing golf or playing basketball or playing football on the same exact fields as all of their competitors through middle school, through high school, through college, if they got scholarships to college. And then when they made it to the pros, that's another step up in skill set. But they surpassed all of their competition to reach the icon status.
Right.
And they competed on the same exact field all the time.
Yeah.
I can't take anybody seriously that hunts 100% exclusive property and kills a monster buck every year. His skill set means nothing to me whatsoever. Personally, I watched a podcast with Tony LaPratt and Don Higgins, and it's the only podcast I've ever watched from start to finish.
That was the one with both of them on at the same time?
Tony blew him out of the water.
And who is Tony?
Tony LaPratt's from Michigan.
Tony LaPratt used to kill deer before he did this land management thing. He's a pretty stone cold killer, and he knows how to hunt. Yeah. In my opinion, Don Higgins, anybody with the finances to do so can kill monster bucks. Just buy a bunch of property and don't let anybody else hunt it. Put food plots out there, never interrupt the property. Put cameras out once you get a deer coming into the camera. Just
Seems
like
to be the recipe.
You go sit there and kill it. That takes zero skill in my opinion, other than the fact that you planting nice crops like a farmer and growing deer. Tony, I mean, if you ever watched that podcast, Tony absolutely blew Don away. You could tell who the true hunter was.
We'll have to watch that.
Interesting.
I am not a land management guy, but I know Tony, and Tony was killing deer before he started this land management thing in pressured areas. So when he goes and does land management things for people, he knew how to kill pressured deer. So if you're going to do land management on somebody and all their bordering properties are surrounded by 10s and 20s of people that are not like-minded, Tony knows how to set up property. So you're going to have deer opportunities on your property, even though the deer may be pressured on the bordering property.
Yeah. I think in fairness of just like the conversation, and this also ties into what you're talking earlier in terms of like competition or, icon status, who's the best or whatever. It almost just seems like it's a different thing. I mean, there's a big conversation to try to like put into a few statements here, but like it seems like what Don Higgins and some of the guys, let's throw Mark Drury in there, some people that are known for managing high profile farms, ultra management. That is a very different thing and requires almost it's not no skill, it's a different skill set to be able to like to build a farm into like a hunting environment that's like the ultimate control. Like I put the food plot there, I put the water hole here, I put the box blind here, I manipulated these deer's movement to be able to get them to do that. That's almost to me, it's the same activity, same sport, but it's an entirely different thing and skill set than what you and Tony are going after, which is very little manipulation, solely hunting, pursuit, understanding, reacting to what a deer is doing to be able to kill him on his terms. Like, I think Jeremy and I have respect for both.
Well, it's because we do both. We have property that we manage and we hunt, and it is not pressured, right? We also go to a lot of places where there is pressure, and the challenge of getting on a buck and finding that buck and getting in the right place at the right time it's satisfying, but in a different way.
And why I think, John, and I'm going to let you have a rebuttal here. Why I think that relates to like the competition thing and like who's the best hunter, which is a fair question. Like as human beings, I think we all want who's the best. Who can we look to? Who's like the best. Unlike sports, even though you play on different fields against different teams. Like, there's different objectives or ways to score. The sport of hunting, I think, is so much more dynamic, not only in the sense that like the environments are different, but literally the objectives are different.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, if my objective is to kill a certain age class of animal, a certain score, a specific animal with a certain weapon, like it's so much more dynamic than, just use the NFL, say like the point is score a touchdown, get the most amount of points. And yeah, I can do it by running or throwing. You still have to score. You still have to score points, and in hunting,
points, but they grow those points. I mean, when you are on those ultra management places, you are not shooting deer, or you're culling 8 points. You're culling any deer that are not double digit when they're 2.5-year-olds. You're physically growing deer just like a rancher grows cattle for the market.
Yeah.
The only difference is they grow deer. They got multiple monster bucks on their properties. Mm-hmm. And once they hit the entertainment value of TV, then they shoot them. So it's not like it's to me, it's just different. When you take competition out of the mix, I think 50% of the hunters in this country could go on Drury's property or Don Higgins' property and do every
sure,
bit as good as
sure.
With the same deer on that property.
But in fairness, John, I don't think that 50% of guys could have manipulated the property the way that Don and Mark have done.
Well, they wouldn't have the finances.
Sure. Big part of it. And that's what I'm saying is, like, I think that it's not like a point that they've reached, like it's beyond what any of us have done. It's just the circumstances that they're in, because they have finances to do it, because they live in a state that, allows for that to happen. It seems like those guys, and I've experienced a little bit of this, like just in land ownership, I can see why it's appealing. Not if it's better or worse.
Sure.
I think those guys are getting more satisfaction out of being able to manipulate a property and a deer's movement, and then ultimately killing him than, in your words, essentially being a better hunter, like being able to read sign, being able to hunt against other hunter pressure. It's become a different thing for them.
Well, it's their job. That's their job. I mean, Mark Drury's job is to sell his skill set to hunters and
that's fair.
Obviously get sponsorships. That's his job. So he's in the entertainment field. I can remember when he first started coming out and bow hunting in the 90s. I used to rep Drury videos, and those guys.
Well, use somebody else, John. There's
a lot
somebody
of people
that's not in the industry. Like,
you guys brought up Drury's. I didn't.
No. And I want to stay on it, but so let's use another guy who's not on TV, it's not his business. Like, the question would be, are there guys out there who?
Like, without a doubt. I know where you're going. Yeah, there's thousands and thousands of people that love to, and I agree with that. You know what, Jared? I'd be an idiot to say I don't agree with that. People want to kill big bucks, so they want to have the least competition they can. They want to grow as many big bucks on the property as they can, so their odds are going to be better, obviously.
Yeah.
And obviously, the more people you keep off your property, and the more you keep it to yourself, the less the deer are pressured, the more they're going to move during daylight hours. The monster bucks, you're not targeting them until they're 4.5 years old, so they have no negative consequences when they go by the hunters as they're growing up to that age. So they're more apt to move during daylight hours. They're going to be less worried about wind direction, if they smell humans, because they did it when they were 1.5, 2.5, and 3.5-year-old bucks and they didn't get shot.
I think it's
a lot of different things.
I think it's a control thing, John. I think it's just, and maybe not everybody has that, but like, I think as bow hunters especially, and as men, I know I am this way inherently. Like, I feel the need or the desire to like have control over the situation or wildlife, and so I, having planted food plots myself, or even on the lowest level that hung a stand, a set that was successful, the fact that I controlled that environment, like the deer did what I made it do that essentially. Like it's all, and I've said it before. When it comes to deer hunting, I'd rather be good than lucky, because the satisfaction that I get out of having controlled that situation. I think some guys really take and run with that all the way to the point of managing 1,000 acres in Iowa.
I think
I understand.
I think
it's gratifying to do what you're doing and have it all come together and get. I totally get that.
And I almost think to to a point. And again, biggest property I'm managing is 130 acres. So in all aspects, I'm not controlling anything. But the fact
I
is,
can't even control my emotions.
I can't control anything. Yeah, I can't control anything. The fact is like,
much less my bowels.
No shit. I almost get more sad. Like it's two very different things. Like, so for instance, last night I'm behind my house. I got 28 acres behind the house. We cleared out an acre of timber recently, and the food plot looks great, and the kids are excited about it. Like the hunting aspect of that, although in the back of my mind, is not nearly what's registering at that moment. To me, it's more of like, cool, I set out a goal on this property. I wanted to do this. I want to see deer. I want to observe deer. But I'm almost not even thinking about, like, how am I going to kill that buck or a big buck or whatever. Like, it's more of what did I create to then, and I'm agreeing in John's sense too, of like that control or that, unpressured situation. That said, if I have a camera on public land 5 miles away and it gets a 5-year-old buck on it, I'm hunting that deer.
Yeah.
So I want that success of, I don't necessarily think it's to the extreme of deer farming. It's deer management or wildlife management or habitat management on a private property because, frankly, I like to see deer. I like to see turkeys. I want to see grouse. When it comes to the hunting side of it, I do want to kill the biggest deer. I don't care where he's at. If he's not on my property and he's on public, I'll hunt him on public. Like it's almost like a switch off and on.
Wouldn't you rather kill him off of that food plot that you planted than on public? That's the control element that I'm talking about. That's where you say, well, it's more satisfying because I created the environment, I controlled it.
I don't know, man.
I've never heard that. See, I've never heard it put that way, Jared. To me, I would do if I had a chance of killing 140 on my own property with food plots and stuff versus a 140 on public, heavily pressured public. Man, I'd take the public land deer
because he's the harder one to kill, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the challenge.
It involves more skill set because he's been shot at before, and he's just. It
is an interesting stuff. I mean,
I think you're a minority.
I've never heard anybody say that before.
I think you're a minority there too, John. I respect the answer. I
probably am.
I like the answer. I don't know if I could say personally that I would take that either because I know it's going to be harder.
I know I'm not. I know I'm the other way. I know. And I don't think about it in terms of difficulty necessarily. While that may be true, I think about it like I put the work in and he's doing what I said. That to me is gratifying. Just even to see fawns eating in a food plot that I planted.
That's what I'm saying. Like I like that aspect of the wildlife and seeing it when it is really a switch on and off because like the moment I see a buck that I'm interested in, I don't care. Obviously I have to have permission to hunt the property, but I don't care if it's my property I put 6 months of work into or
how about no permission? That makes it even harder.
Yeah, it's even harder at that point, right?
Let's raise the stakes here, gentlemen.
But it's a very different approach on it. Now, posed with the situation of I have an exact same age, very close score buck on my place versus public. At this point in my life, frankly, I probably would kill the public one because my kids probably are going to hunt the easier one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just being honest with myself is like the kids are probably going to get a chance at the easier one than I am.
Hence the dynamic, why I'm saying it's.
Well, and that's why I ask about the Kansas thing, because what's so interesting, like we all seek a weird satisfaction, right? At the culmination of this thing, we all seek a weird satisfaction of accomplishment. And so, like, when we go to Kansas, I don't care if we're hunting a lease or public or whatever, you kill a mature buck in Kansas. That is what I set out to do. I don't care if he scores 125 or 185. Like, I'd love to shoot a giant, but, like, if I shoot a mature buck in Kansas with my bow, that's what I set out to do. Same with Pennsylvania or Kentucky or wherever I'm hunting. But how that satisfaction individually is perceived per John, if he has access to a piece of property behind his house and there's a 140 or there's a 140 on public, you probably get more satisfaction out of killing that public land deer.
Without question. And also you got to keep in mind when you're going on these out-of-state trips, there's a real high level of satisfaction because it's a short-term hunt.
Absolutely.
Anytime you have a short-term hunt and you get it done, I don't care what state you're in. You go out on a 1 week hunt and you kill a big buck on public land or some knock on doors for permission stuff. in Kansas or Iowa or Missouri, that's a big sense of satisfaction.
Sure.
Because you made it happen in a week.
Mm-hmm.
7 days of hunting versus 3 to 4 months of hunting in your home state. And as far as the best hunter in the country, it could be some dude that hunts public land in Pennsylvania, in the hill country, and he hunts some ag property, and he's killing 2.5 and 3.5-year-olds every year in a heavily pressured areas. He could be the best hunter. There is no way of putting the best hunter.
And I think that's what it comes down to. We always want to search for it. I just think because there's so many different dynamics.
Yeah, we all know it's not.
You can't name good hunters, but it's always with an asterisk because is it good because they kill it on a high pressured public? Is it good because they're killing giant bucks in the Midwest every year? Like there's always some undertone asterisk to it when you say they're a good hunter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's so many levels. Okay, are you going to say a guy is a great hunter because he can go hunt in an enclosure and kill 100 or 200 incher every year and pay $17,000? Is he a good hunter because he did that?
No.
And then you go next level down. The next level down is ultra managed property, like the TV guy, Don Higgins. Can Don Higgins go to PA and kill that 2.5 or 3.5-year-old every year that guy's been killing that is a phenomenal hunter? No, Don Higgins couldn't do that. He doesn't have that skill set. So he's not multifaceted hunter.
Well, and let me throw this in.
Could probably go to Don's and do every bit as good.
That's an interesting point.
Let me throw this into what you just said right there, because this is what like the thing that just throws a wrench in all of it is, bad hunters, like we say, kill big deer all the time. Like there's an element of luck that
that's why we
100% exists.
And
And so for us to say, whether it's Don or whoever you want to use, well, Don couldn't come to PA and kill this buck. Who knows? Little Amish girl with a crossbow did. So Don might get lucky also.
I said consistently. I didn't say.
Oh, did
once.
you? Okay.
Yeah.
I did.
Okay.
The consistency.
Well, there you go. That's kind of the defense for luck, I suppose.
And so, here's the thing that we haven't even addressed at all. Let's look. Let's look at this overall. Is what about the guy? And we talked. So we talked to Jake Ealinger a couple weeks ago. John, Jake. He's a Michigan guy. Was in QDMA stuff. Big bow hunter in Michigan as well. And so
I think I know who he is. Yeah.
And so when we're talking to Jake, Jake got to a point in Michigan where, I don't know if it was in the late 70s, early 80s, where he basically started passing 1 and 2-year-old bucks to try to kill a 3-year-old buck. Right. And so how many great hunters are out there in Michigan, Pennsylvania, et cetera, and I'm not putting this like egotistically in there, but I've killed a ton of 2 and 3-year-old bucks consistently on public land in my life. I eventually said, you know what? I'm always 4 and older. That's my goal now. There were several seasons I didn't kill shit because my goal was 4 and older. Does that make me or anyone else not a great hunter? Because I could have killed 3-year-olds all day long if I wanted to, but I chose not to. So now I'm not killing deer, but it's not because I didn't have chances. It's because I set my standards higher.
Well, what a great opportunity to like look and so we're looking out at an industry or at people to say who's how am I rating myself as a hunter, and so like I think what you just said right there is a great evidence to say maybe I should just look at myself and figure out why
I think that's the only competition
that
you can have. The only competition you can have is within yourself, because that's the only time that the playing field will always be level.
Jake's got a really cool story because he evolved out of just a high pressure state where if it's brown is down, that was the culture.
It was Michigan, right?
And there was, I think, there was very few deer at when he first started his hunting career. So to even see one was like, that was crazy.
He was a trapper and a small game hunter when he started.
And so he now at this point in his life, I think he's in his 70s.
78.
Yeah, 78.
Oh wow,
he's old.
That's not what I was thinking of.
I think so.
Yeah, older gentleman, and he's got essentially a wall of it's pre.
I think it was pre-85 is I think the time for 85, 87.
Pre him, trying to like hold out for an older age class of deer, trying to, and he's big on he was a QDMA guy, like we said, so he was starting to make modifications. He was one of those guys that was sat down and for hours, he would sketch out plans on just obsess over his 160-acre property or whatever it is, all these tree plantings and stuff, and that's where he finds joy. But so he's got this pre all of that wall with like a bunch of forked horns all over it, and then he's got another wall after the fact that's like a trophy wall. And people might take that out of context, but they're big deer.
Yeah, anything from 115 to 150. And
it's pretty cool to see that transition.
But there's a guy, and John, I'm sure you're even to that point because I mean, how many 2 and 3 year olds do you probably pass in a given season?
Oh, I like you. I do. I pass up 2 and 3. If they're not 125, I typically won't.
That's the goal now. Is that the goal now, John? Is it in Michigan? Is 125 is the goal?
Yeah. In southern Michigan, my goal, which is more ag, and they get bigger per age group, it's 125. In northern Michigan, 115.
Yeah, because
I mean, I've shot 5-year-old bucks up here that are 105 inches.
Well, I was gonna say this buck was a 7.5, and he scored 106.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
But that's a Pennsylvania mountain buck. In fact, he decreased probably 20 inches from the year before.
Otherwise, if you're hunting in an area, there's no 125. You're wasting your time sitting in a tree.
Well, yeah, I mean that deer field dressed at like 235. So I mean,
it's a big old buck.
Back to your point on Jake, I have done several seminars at QDM things, just talking about regular hunting, and a lot of QDM guys they QDM their property, but they still don't know how to hunt.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Yes.
And so I've done a lot of seminars at those, and I've talked, and then there'd always be the cocky guys that come up, well, I'm QDMing, and I'm, these guys are in their 70s, late 60s, and, I've shot 6 Pope and Young bucks off my property, and these were all in Michigan, by the way. And I said, okay, well, how many years? So he's being cocky like he's this great hunter. I said, well, how many years have you been doing this QDM on your property? 10, and I've got 6 Pope and Young bucks. Well, how many years did you bow hunt before you did your QDM property? 35. Well, how many young bucks did you kill during that 35 years before you did QDM property? None. So that I put it in. I just put them back in their place. Okay, you're not hunting property that a normal person gets to hunt. Well, I am in the minority, Jared. I totally agree with you, and I get a lot of flack for that. I just deal with reality.
Sure.
And like you guys can go to Kansas and you're going to see 125s and 140 inches, whether you kill them or not, where you set your criteria.
Yep.
You may come home empty. Sure. I totally agree with you, Jeremy. If you will come home empty, it's because your criteria was above what, you could have killed something, maybe 125 Pope and Young.
Yep.
And then maybe the last day you say, okay, I'm going to drop my thing down to 125, and then you don't get the opportunity.
And I'm satisfied with that. Like I'm content driving home. Yeah, I'm content driving home, not having filled that tag, knowing that like the one that I wanted or a group of bucks that I was looking for just weren't there.
Well, it's what you said there just a minute ago, I think is really interesting as it pertains to our conversation about like land management and manipulation versus just call it hunting skill. It seems like the implementation of QDM is almost a substitute, or it lessens the hunting skill required because you're producing an environment. Like it's not like before I had to go to a blank slate and just read what the deer are doing and take advantage of it. No, I've spent time and money to create a food plot or something that's going to funnel deer into a certain area. Thus, my hunting skill or ability to read is less is required of me to be able to kill those deer. That's why, on the extreme end of it, Mark Drury and Don Higgins can go out and sit in a box blind on a food plot and not read a lick of sign, never go into their woods and kill the biggest deer on the property.
Right.
So that's interesting. It's kind of,
I totally agree with that. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
It is an interesting thing because, again, I, like Jared and probably a lot of guys listen, I get a lot of satisfaction out of planting a food plot and watching the deer and things like I do, and almost in a way of in Pennsylvania, because we can't bait, my food plot behind my house is just as much a tool for my kids to hunt over as it is to keep deer at 2 and 3 year old protected or try to keep them protected on my property so the neighbors don't kill them. Right? I mean, it's almost as a defense technique. We talked about this with baiting in Ohio as almost as a defense technique in some cases.
Well, dude, not only that, this just popped into my head. Think about the same way that we don't, not let kids shoot small bucks. It's because we want to keep them interested. We want them to have fun. We have them to have success. Some guys could look at this as an excuse, but I think it could also be applied to guys, hunting over corn piles or hunting with crossbow, like something that totally gives us an advantage. Like I was just thinking, because I've got a deer on my property right now that, man, he might be killable. Like, enough time, enough effort, enough skill, you'd be able to read how he's coming out of this clear cut into a bean field and maybe kill him. But like, so for my uncle, not that my strategy would be any different.
Mm-hmm.
Putting a corn pile out is not out of the question, and I'm trying to think, why is that? Like, we talk so much about should we bait, should we not bait? Like, it ultimately seems like I don't know if my uncle and I are at the same point here in our hunting careers, but it's like, man, that they're killing that buck off the corn pile. Like, we're making the assessment at this point, like right now, at that point in the season, would be worth making it easier with a corn pile. Like like the satisfaction would still be there.
Still get the satisfaction. Mm-hmm.
Man, and that's a tough thing. It's a complicated decision.
There's so many levels to the corn thing, because you can go out west where they allow putting out corn, like you see on the TV shows. Deer always come in and they may be in a weed field and they always come in right to the tree.
Oh yeah,
obviously they got corn in the weeds so that you can't see with the camera.
Well, John, we're friends here, so I can say this, and I'm not like holier than thou. I bought 7,500 pounds of corn the other day. My barn is full. I need like a silo. Okay.
I bought some corn. Man, it was $13 a bag. I put it in my yard. I live in a lake community, so there's deer in my yard. My wife likes.
I got it for $8 from a neighbor, and at the end of it, he said, "Y'all got any flavoring?" I was like, "No." He's like, he gave me a little water bottle with no label on it that says apple.
Jeez, is this good for 7,500?
QDM guys, they become good. I mean, they are becoming good at farming. What to put in the soil to make the crops grow, and you plant this and that, and on your property, figure out what grows the best, what the deer like the best, and that's what you plant. So there's a lot of farming skills. So you become skilled at other things when you do QDM.
And there's an element of that I like.
Farming element.
I just think that the I don't want to say like true hunters, but a hunter will then make a flip of a switch to say, okay, where is the opportunity for me to achieve my goal? And where I'll get with that, John, is I don't think that many of these guys who hunt solely manicured properties would be willing to not hunt those properties and go find a deer on public or elsewhere if they don't have a deer that meets their criteria, right? So if my criteria is to hunt a 4.5-year-old buck, if I don't have one on my managed property, I'm going to go and start placing cameras on public or elsewhere to find a 4.5-year-old buck for me to hunt this year.
You're going to lose a lot of cameras if you do that.
Well, yeah, maybe I do, but
yeah,
my goal is
I agree with that.
Where I think some people, I would, and I think we talked about this, like if you don't have a 4.5-year-old buck in your area, then like you have to reset your realistic goals or be ready to not shoot anything this year. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Stealth Cam.
Dude, where would we be without our cell cams?
I would definitely be divorced at this point.
Yeah, I hear that.
I mean, the fact is I spent more time checking cameras than I actually did hunting prior to cell cameras. Now, at least, my wife can enjoy me being in the comfort of my own home, buried in my phone, checking those pictures.
Yeah, 100%. And dude, when it comes to trail cameras and definitely cell cameras, reliability is, I think, the number one thing that we're looking for. Stealth Cam just has a long reputation of reliable cameras, and ultimately that is the most important thing to us. They have to work.
In terms of reliability, there's not a better camera on the market than Stealth Cam, whether you're talking about the Fusion X, the Reactor, or the DS4K Transmit. And most of them are under $200.
Stealthcam.com. Check them out. Pertaining to your goals, John. So where you're at in Michigan, it's 125, and obviously situational. My uncle and I, who I bring up on the podcast all the time, my uncle is one of my biggest influences for getting into bow hunting and wanting to pursue big animals. But even today, after hunting together for years and years, we've got some pretty stark differences in how we look at deer we should target, frankly.
Yeah.
So, he's, 58. I think he's 58. And so he is very much interested in the score. Very much. It sounds maybe more in line with your thinking. He's
I'm
like
a score guy, not an age.
Not an age guy. So when presented with the opportunity, I think 10 times out of 10, he would rather shoot a 150-inch 3-year-old than a 140-inch 4-year-old. And I'm on the other side of it. I prefer an older age class of animal. I would rather shoot a lower scoring.
Well, but you're saying that because you want that 3-year-old to make it to 4 to be bigger.
Right. That's where it gets interesting, because if it's a 170-inch 4-year-old or a 150-inch 5-year-old, I'm probably going to shoot the 170-inch 4-year-old. Because there's a point where age becomes it's mature. It's no longer relevant.
He's not going to get a lot bigger.
Yeah, and whether it's 4 or 5 or 6.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. Yeah, there's just so many levels and all of this.
So what are your thoughts on that, John? Would you, how does age?
It depends on where I was hunting. If I was hunting in an area where I knew that deer was going to live another year, if I was hunting out west, I'd probably pass on the younger buck with the higher potential. Or if I was managing property, there's no question. I'm not worried about that deer getting killed by anybody else.
Yeah.
So he's going to be there next year unless coyotes get him or something happens, EHD or CWD. I'm going to definitely do exactly what you're talking about and let that deer grow another year. But where I'm hunting in Michigan, you can't let a decent deer go because the odds of him getting killed are really high during gun season.
I see. I guess the question is, and stick with Michigan where you're hunting primarily, does age bear any relevance on your desire to shoot an animal or not? None.
Absolutely zero.
Wow.
I'll be perfectly honest with you. None. Yeah. It's all about antler size.
Well, I was gonna say,
where I'm at, they're not. I can't say that deer's going to be there next year.
For your style of hunting, John, being a lot of high pressured areas, I think you don't have a choice. I mean,
exactly. I don't have a choice
because
the odds of that deer making it are pretty.
Whereas you're passing that deer because you think you will make.
Well, and those odds are such a gray area. That's where we have conflict. Is that my uncle will be, and I fully support where he's coming from. He'll listen to this podcast at some point, but I think we convince ourselves that he will or he won't get shot. It's easy to let that influence whether or not we'll shoot that animal. So in my defense, I want to believe, man, if I kill him, he's surely not going to make it. Like there's always a chance. And I want to hold true to that. Maybe it's because I have just in terms of our age and maybe I have more years ahead of me type of deal. And he is more like, dude, that thing's getting shot. Like there's a 90% chance it's not going to make it. I'm going to kill that animal. And so we have conflict there to say we should or we shouldn't,
Yeah. I've had that discussion with a lot of people. You're absolutely right. If you kill it, it's guaranteed he ain't going to make it another year.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, you know,
and it's one of those staple statements that I could see somebody hating. It's like, you can't kill him from the couch. Yes, but.
Well, I mean, I'll be the first to say at some point I changed to that 4-year-old status, but I was probably closer to John's mentality when I hunted a lot of public land, of which, I was looking for probably at that time 110 or 115 inch deer and bigger. Like, I mean, at one point when I was in college, it was a legal buck, right? I was just looking for legal bucks with my bow to kill.
You're doing it right, Jeremy. You're doing the progression. That's the natural progression of becoming, in my opinion, a good deer hunter.
Mm-hmm.
When I started bow hunting, I'd shoot a button buck point. I'd shoot a doe point.
Yeah.
And I graduated up to a mature does and 1.5-year-old bucks.
Yep.
And then I got 2.5-year-old bucks. And then I went to 3.5. So I kept progressing my skill set. Whereas if I just shot a deer, I'd be done in 2 days of season. And I just kept wanting to up my challenges. And that's kind of exactly what you're
I'm not knocking anybody for this, but we've brought this up before. And I know people give us shit on it essentially, but like at some point, you have to challenge yourself. Like that's anything in life. But let's just focus on hunting here. Like at some point, if I go out with my bow and I kill a fork horn or a 1-year-old 6-point every year for 10, 15 years in a row, do you not want to challenge yourself? Like
absolutely,
and I don't question this as like just on a hunting side. I question it as an overall life goal of like, if you never challenge yourself at this point, or you're comfortable and satisfied every year killing that 4-point, you better check yourself in the mirror.
I totally agree. 100%.
And
Yep.
it's
So
just a natural thing, like to improve as a human, to improve as a husband or a father or a boyfriend or whatever it might be at your job. Like at some point, you have to challenge yourself, and you will fail. You will eat tag soup. You will not be successful, but that's only part of the process.
You're never afraid. If you're always afraid of failure, you're never going to get good at anything.
And my fear, John, in this society, and this is why like I wrestle with this with my kids all the time, is that we are very quickly approaching where everybody wants it easy and nobody wants to fail. You hear people, and this is not to pick on people, but you hear people that have a failure in their life and they literally mentally break down. Like they fall apart as a human being. Well, when I failed, I learned from it and said, shit, don't do that again. How do we beat it?
Well, take that and relate it to what we're saying about the Northeast, for example, versus the Midwest. Like easy's overrated, because if you're only experiencing big bucks fretting all the time, it just becomes like you expect that, and it's just what it is. And if that gets taken away from you, it's like
And where does that satisfaction go? Like at some point, if every season I hunt and I see multiple 4 and 5-year-olds, multiple booners, and I kill a booner, where do I go from there? I can't just say, well, cool, I'm only going to kill 200s.
Exactly.
It's a unicorn.
Exactly.
Well, and this is what's cool about deer hunting is I think it, and I don't know. I mean, I think it's to me the pursuit of a specific animal and the fact that each one of them has a different personality and stuff. That seems like kind of an unending pursuit.
John, does that fall into your hunting style in Michigan at all? I know it has.
I'm sorry. Finish your statement.
Well, just because you talk about the ability not to purposely pass, but obviously you don't get an opportunity at every buck you hunt. So do you start to build history with a specific deer that becomes that individual, competition, you against a specific deer?
There are times where I will, in the last few years, I'll get pictures of a specific deer, like the one I got last year up here. One of the two I got last year in Michigan. I was targeting that specific deer. Typically, when I'm doing all my scouting and location prep, I'm prepping locations based on deer sign and why deer mature bucks should be in this area and in this specific spot.
Mm-hmm.
So typically, I'm not targeting a individual deer.
Okay.
I have in the past, and I'm pretty good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Miles Keller was like that. I don't know if you guys remember Miles.
I remember
Keller,
Miles.
He had a job where in the 80s he was driving around. He'd see big bucks out in fields, and he'd get permission because it was a lot easier back then. And he was excellent. Probably the best man I've ever known that I've read about that was good at targeting a specific animal just randomly, not on a specific piece of managed property with no competition.
Just random.
He would just see a deer and physically go get permission, try to figure that deer out in a short period of time and kill that deer. And he was really, really good at it. I, on the other hand, am a little bit different. There's times when I know somebody will tell me there's a monster deer in this spot, so I'll go target that deer. But usually I'm just hunting places where big mature bucks in a pressured scenario would be, back in the heavy security cover. I hunt in bedding areas a lot. Everything is security cover oriented.
And I would assume, John, that some of those places fail to produce, right? They don't have a buck of the caliber that you're looking for.
They either don't have one I'm looking for, or the timing's not right, and I'm not there on the right days where he goes by my tree.
Yep.
So that's a scenario too, because I never overhunt my spots. And a lot of times I'm sure they go by it when I'm not there.
Sure.
I think, John, what you're saying, in my opinion, depends a lot on time of year. Like early and late. I assume you'll agree with this. Early and late in the season, it's very much, patternable. But you really can't beat a good spot during the rut.
Yeah, you're right.
That's why in Kansas,
pre-ruts in my favorite.
That's like so in Kansas. Granted, it is Kansas, but we go during the rut, and that affords us the opportunity to just hunt good spots. We don't have a specific. The buck's coming out here. He's doing this. We don't know. We know what a good spot is because of terrain, topography, and they end up there. They all end up there at one point.
And I would assume that you're probably more efficient at hunting the deer of the caliber you're looking for now, John, because of trail cameras, right? In the 80s and 90s,
well, that helps big time.
it was
Yeah,
it was purely sign, and you're basically saying, well, there should be a big buck in here, or there could be a big buck in here based on the sign, but you don't know. You have no idea.
We got lots of locations, and we have a camera at every location, and you hunt according to what you see on
Yep.
the camera. Yeah, so it's just totally different.
It's an interesting thing. Yeah, I mean, when you start to look at kind of the situations, and again, it's that satisfaction, which everybody's different on that. You know, there's definitely a time in the season, probably mid-October, I would say, when scrapes are cranking, that like I just go for probably, I don't know, 8 to 10 mile walk on deep public land and find scrapes and put cameras up, just because out of curiosity. Just because I want to know, like,
I tell you a lot.
You know, there could be a big buck, and if there is, you know what, I'll go and hunt them if I'm not tagged out. But everybody should have that like time frame in their mindset that says, I'm going to go and try something new. I'm going to go in a new area. I'm going to look at new sign, because even if you hunt a very, very well managed property, I do not think that there is any substitute for woodsmanship and being able to understand deer sign. I don't care how good the property is. I don't care if you just want to go to a box blind and hunt a food plot. It's still understanding woodsmanship and how deer react and behave and the sign they leave behind is a critical skill. Maybe you don't use it this year, but sure as hell you're going to use it at some point in your hunting career.
And one thing you mentioned, you know, going during the rut, you mentioned that, Jared. We go post rut in Kansas because I suffer in Michigan with everybody else. You know, I like to suffer with all the people that have to hunt public lands and have to work hard at it. And so I don't leave Michigan until gun season, you know, because I don't gun. So 15th of November. So we go to Kansas. We leave on the 16th, and Kansas has such a late gun season, just like
December.
Ohio does, and Iowa does.
Mm-hmm.
So we can hunt the post rut.
Yep.
In Kansas before the gun season.
What do you call it?
Same
the
time
post
frame,
John?
The time frame we hunt.
Our hunting starts getting really good around the 22nd, 23rd of November.
Yeah.
So the peak rut's over. Most of the vast majority of the does have been bred. And now those big bucks, actually, when we go during the peak rut, when we get out there and we start hunting about the 19th, because the first 2 days we do prep location, the 19th, 20th, 21st, we see a lot of 130s, you know, 135s, lots of them. But then once it gets the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, we start seeing the monsters.
So
they're no longer
right at the end of our trip.
Doed up.
Yep.
Yeah, they're no longer doed up, and now their testosterone is still extremely high, and they want to keep breeding. So now they physically have to go out and search for those late estrus does, because typically during a peak rut, those mature bucks are breeding does in heavy security cover and not moving a lot during daylight out. That's why you see all the little bucks searching around and moving around. So they're looking for a loose doe.
So I think we're either a week ahead of you or it overlaps.
We always leave the Friday of Veterans Day. That's the day that we always.
And then we're there through
7 days,
like the Saturday before Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what day is that of the year?
I'll tell you right now. So we are leaving.
We find the 23rd through the 27th.
I think this year we're there the 12th to the 18th.
So you're there over Thanksgiving?
You guys are there peak rut. Yeah, we're there over Thanksgiving.
Over Thanksgiving. Okay. So yeah, we'll be there like the 13th through the 19th type of deal. And what we've seen is like, I don't think granted you wouldn't see it, but like it didn't, it seems like what has a way bigger impact is the temperature.
Yeah, the weather.
You know, it seems like when it's cold, they're going. You know, we see a lot of scraping activity, a lot of cruising activity. I guess it could be hit or miss, but on trips that we have that it's warm, like I think 2020, was it 2020?
Yep.
And it was hot, and I mean they just shut off completely. It was terrible.
Yeah, my son Chris, when he was with me, when he was around, he went on an Iowa hunt by himself, and it was 80 degrees. In 3 days, he saw no bucks. Dropped down to 35 degrees one night. Next day, he saw 11 bucks.
Yeah. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt Archery.
Dude, where would we be without our Hoyt bows?
Probably shooting crossbows.
Or a Matthews, yeah.
One and the same.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, we love being Hoyt guys because you stand out. When you're in this room full of other people that shoot these other types of bows, I feel like the Hoyt guys just stick out.
Dude, it's just a legit bow. I mean, especially that carbon riser, man. I mean, I know that they've got several other aluminum lines as well, but for me, I'm shooting that RX5 in the carbon model. They've since come out with the RX7, and I can't tell you how much I love being a Hoyt guy amongst a sea full of Matthews guys. So we're out there, I think, proving them wrong, shooting 80 pounds and killing stuff.
Hey, man, if you want to get serious, get Hoyt. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to talk about, just because it's been brought up and Jared and I don't know a lot about it, so we figured maybe you definitely know more than we do, is the Mitch Rumpola buck. And so if people don't know what this is, they probably will when they see the picture. Mitch has got like a big black beard, and there's this giant wide Michigan buck that maybe, I would say is probably one of the most debatable bucks / pictures.
Why?
In whitetail.
What's debatable about it?
Well, I mean, is it real? Did he kill it? Is it legal? Was it a high fence? And that's where I'm going to cue John in because I don't know much more than that about it.
Well, there'd be no way it would be a high fence because somebody would have a picture of it.
Sure.
The rancher.
Sure.
Obviously. I've been a scorer since 1985 in Michigan, and Mitch was the scoring chairman for a lot of those years. He actually signed my card
Wow.
when I became a scorer. So I know Mitch very well. I've done seminars with Mitch at the Lansing Center before at our Deer Expo. Mitch is a different type of bird. I can remember I was at a show when I repped for Golden Eagle Bows, which you guys remember those?
Yep.
It got bought by Bear and went defunct.
Yep. I remember going.
I was at the Deer Expo, and Mitch took me back in the back room. He had this big white lockbox, and he opened it up. He unlocked it, and he pulled out this shed, and it was a 98-inch, one-sided typical five. It looked like the Jordan, which the Jordan buck was the world record for years and years and years on with a gun.
Yep.
It looked just like that, and when he pulled it out of the box, I could immediately tell that he had put something on the antler, colored it, because the antler was weather checked, big time.
Sure.
You could tell this antler had laid outside, probably in a Midwestern state, a Kansas, an arid state, for a couple of years. It was that weather checked, and out there they don't get eaten by the mice and squirrels and stuff.
You see some of those on the table here that we've picked up many years after they were shed.
Yeah, and you could tell that he was trying to tell me that this was a 2-day-old shed. He said I saw this buck 2 days before I found this shed.
Red flag.
So I immediately knew that was a lie.
John's got his spider sense on.
Did you
now.
say something?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
He was already in a back room alone.
I would have been like, what do you mean? It's like clearly glossy. Like, what's the deal with this thing?
I just didn't say anything. He had it colored like it was brown, like it was a fresh drop, but you could see the weather checking underneath it big time.
Weird.
I don't know. I just thought, well, Mitch, whatever blows up your skirt, man. He wants to tell me he's got a world record buck in where he's hunting. That's fine. So anyway, if this buck would have had a matching side, that would have been 196. And then if it would have had a 20-inch spread, that would have been 216. World record. Milo Hansen was 214.
Yep.
Okay. The buck Mitch supposedly shot was also 216, 30.5-inch inside spread. So immediately, things like that raise a flag up because I've scored so many deer.
Yeah, he's lying to you. It's obviously a red flag.
Yes, from ranches. And I just kept that in the back of my mind. And I'm like, Mitch had the state record in Michigan in 182 12 point. And now I could mentally say he's trying to go for a world record somehow, because this buck obviously would be a new world record if it had a matching side, and it's going to be there next year. So nothing happened the next year. And then like 3 years later, he kills this 216 14 point. Now, initially, I was giving him the benefit of the doubt because I knew one of the guys that actually handled the rack and said the rack was real.
And it was that a 7x7, John, is what you're saying?
It was a 7x7.
Okay.
Correct.
So he didn't
like
use,
a rake on each side. It wasn't junk. It was a clean 7x7.
So he didn't use the 5-point that you had seen several years
No.
previous.
Oh, no. It was totally different.
Totally different.
This thing was really wide, 30.5 inches. The other one, if it would have had a matching side, would have been about a 20-inch inside spread.
Okay.
But that's 2 world record bucks from Grand Traverse County, which is all sandy soil.
For sure.
And you're hard pressed to see a buck in that county that's over 150 inches in the record.
Is that Traverse? Okay. Is that Traverse City area?
Yes, Grand Traverse County.
So you're up there.
So, I'm sorry?
You're up there north.
Yeah, he's way up in the northeast corner of the state. It's all sand over there, sand dune.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, no minerals in the soil. I think the top buck in that state or in that area with a bow is 150 inches over all the history of Michigan. Okay, so now he's supposedly found the shed of a potential world record buck, and now he's supposedly killed a world record buck. Well, when he got the state record buck, which he killed in 1982. There wasn't really any scrutiny that went with that. It just got thrown in the record. It's just a state record. And back then, they weren't critiquing everything like they do now. Now they stick a microscope up your ass and want to know everything about it. So they wanted to confirm this. They wanted to X-ray the antlers, and he refused to X-ray the antlers. So when you X-ray antlers, that can tell you if the antlers have been altered.
Sure.
Not pure bone, because there were differences in the X-ray of the bone.
Yeah. He
refused to do that. Everything he did thereafter was a negative to that deer being real. And I've talked to world-class taxidermists. They can alter antlers while they're on the deer.
Sure.
And you would never, ever know it.
We just had Antlers by Klaus do fix a shed for us, who is a world-class, taxidermist, and you would never know the difference. You would never think that
or a first name.
No, it's Klaus Lebricht.
Lebricht? Yeah. He does like all of the
Kings of Bucks and Bass Pro.
All the stuff you see, like he does all of them.
He makes all the replicas.
Oh, okay.
He's the man.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of guy.
Aware.
Yeah.
So you're aware, and obviously that's, in my personal opinion, that's exactly what happened. Is he had these antlers altered, and he did not think he was going to get a microscope up his yin yang to get it entered as a world, a world record. So anyway, then this is way, way deep.
That's all right. That's where we want to be.
There was a guy that had killed a 196-inch buck in Jackson County, Michigan. Craig Calderon was his name.
Okay.
And that was going to go in and be the new state record buck. This is before that big buck. Okay, yep. Mitch's buck. This was in the early 90s. So that was going to be the new state record typical with a bow, 196 inches. So Mitch didn't like that too awful much. Well, it come to find out, Craig Calderon had several not really poaching, but violations for shining after midnight with a high-powered rifle in his car. So he had that buck taken out of the record book. Now Mitch's is the state record again. So by the time Mitch showed everybody this big wide butt, Craig Calderon had bought this little trailer, and he was taking it around to all of these shows, the Ohio Deer Expo, Michigan Deer Expo, and he had bought the rights to the Milo Hansen buck. So in this trailer, he had his 196-inch buck. He had the Milo Hansen replica in there, and he was charging, I don't know, $2 or $5 to go through this trailer at these shows, and he had a bunch of big antlers in there for people to see, and the current world record buck. Well, because Mitch wouldn't get his antlers X-rayed, and he also, from what I understand, and I don't have solid proof of this, but his cape got spoiled, all the meat got spoiled, so they couldn't do any DNA testing, because they can do DNA testing and tell if that buck was from that area.
Huh.
So he would not do that.
Red flag.
And then, but he kept saying, you know, I've got the world record buck, even though it was not legitimately entered as the world record buck, because he wouldn't go through the steps to do so. So Craig Calderon, because he was charging people to see the world record buck, he told Mitch, you know, I'm going to sue you if you keep telling everybody you got the world record buck, because I'm monetarily profiting off of the Milo Hansen buck as the legitimate world record.
Mm-hmm.
So Mitch actually signed some paperwork that he would never enter his buck as long as the Calderon, you know, had that deal with Milo Hansen buck. And the first year Mitch shot that buck at the ATA show, his pictures were everywhere. You know, he shot it in the fall. Next January, month or so later, his pictures were all over that show. Everybody was excited. We got a new world record bow kill, typical. And then once all this other stuff happened and he wouldn't get it entered, he wouldn't get it scored, he wouldn't x-ray the antlers. The next year, the only guy that had Mitch's picture at the ATA show was Kevin Cray. Now, Kevin Cray owned Hogs Unlimited, which was Synthetic Sense.
Mm-hmm.
Familiar with that?
Yep.
Is that
That
the Hog and
years?
Sons things that we see?
No, I think Hogs Unlimited eventually became Buck Fever Synthetics.
It might be. I don't know. I know it was Hogs Unlimited, but Kevin was kind of a shady character too. He ended up going to jail after Mitch wouldn't do all this entering and stuff, and then Craig Calderon was going to sue him, and he signed this paperwork, and Mitch lost all of his credibility. So in the next 5 years, he killed 4 bucks in Michigan, all 25.5 inch to 28.5 inch inside spread.
What?
Now, if you guys you heard me. 25.5 inch inside spread was the narrowest. 28.5 inch was the widest.
This is Mitch killing them.
Yes, and keep in mind the one that he shot as what he was claiming as the record was 30.5 inches. So I'm talking to Tira O'Brien, which is a female, Tira. She's dead now, but she was the scoring chairman for CBM. I was talking to her on the phone, you know, multiple years after this whole buck thing has kind of been put to bed. And I said, well, I was talking to her on the phone about something, and we got on the Mitch thing, and she said, oh, yeah, I believe that was the legitimate and stuff. And I said, you do realize he's killed 4 more bucks since then that were 25.5 inch spread or bigger. She said, yeah, I'm aware of that. I said, do you know how rare a 20 inch inside spread buck is? She said, yeah, they're kind of rare. I said,
kind of.
Are you on your computer? And she said, yes. Just like I'm talking to you guys. Are you on your computer? And she said, yeah. I said, can you look up, how long would it take you to find out how many bucks in Michigan, gun, bow, pickups, whatever, have been entered into the Michigan record book for all time that are over 25 inch inside spread? And she looked it up, took her like 10 seconds, and it was 8. 8 bucks, all time in Michigan, gun, bow, and pickups. Okay, how many are over 26 inch inside spread? 4. And then I said, how many were over 27 inch inside spread? 0.
Wow.
So you're telling me that in a county that's not known for big bucks, because it's such sandy soil, that there's a bow hunter that has killed 4 bucks plus that 30.5 inch inside spread buck. So basically 5 bucks that were over 25.5 inch inside spread over this many years with a bow. And there hasn't been any entered during the whole history of CBM that are over 27.5 inch. I think there was 2 or 3 that were over 27 inches.
Crazy.
And there's never been one entered over 27 inches in the history of the state. Then it kind of she started thinking about it. Yeah, it is kind of strange. I said, yeah, you're talking 6 or 7 years, killing 5 bucks between 25.5 and 30.5 inches.
And I mean,
that's not insane. That's impossible.
How is Mitch like, I mean, obviously after the
Mitch
first one,
Mitch is alive.
I don't know. Is Mitch still alive, John?
Yeah, he's still alive.
You know,
What's he doing? Is he like?
I have no idea.
probably still killing 30-inch wide bucks.
Maybe we can learn.
No, I never hear about his hunting anymore.
Well, I mean,
And he
that's
was a
what
very knowledgeable guy. When I did the seminars with him, he seemed more into social behavior than
Sure.
actual hunting skill sets.
Hmm.
And he's from Missouri, and when he was 14, I think he was 14 years old, he killed a Missouri state record. But I think he had family that had an enclosure. So if you're asking me, I would bet my house and my life that was definitely not.
Is that your wife or your life?
My wife.
You know, what's so crazy about that is like you said, if before that buck happened, you would, maybe Mitch was a strange bird, but you would have known him as like, a decent hunter, an authority. I mean, obviously nobody questioned the 12 point, which now probably should be in question. And then
You're
after that,
right.
that giant and all the controversy around it, what would drive somebody to then try to pull it over 4 more times, basically?
Well, he wasn't trying to pull it over 4 more times. He was just trying to earn his Michigan credibility back, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So he wasn't showing those deer to anybody other than people in Michigan that were with CBM and scorers and stuff. I think he was extremely embarrassed about the whole big lie.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when he showed me that first shed out of that lockbox and it was all weather checked and it would have been a new world record, I immediately knew, this guy's going.
Yeah.
Mitch he's just a different, he had been arrested for some other stuff. We worked for the post office and
those postmen.
Fraudulent checks.
yeah, and a lot of this stuff,
Voter
I
fraud?
know, sure, but some of this is secondhand information, but I've seen pictures of some of the 25.5 and 26.5 inch bucks he shot after the big one.
Yeah.
And also when you look at that picture of that buck, the big one, I mean, to me, those brow tines are way.
Well, yeah, it doesn't look
out.
natural. I mean, that's the thing that anybody that sees the Mitch Rumpola buck looks at and just says, I mean, it doesn't look natural. Like, I mean, people have seen pictures of Milo Hansen's buck. If you've ever seen it in real life, like the replica and stuff, it is a giant. That Milo Hansen buck is a giant. There is a reason that it has stood the test of time since early 90s was when he killed that, John?
Yeah.
Milo Hansen?
Yep.
I mean, so you're talking 30 plus years. There's a reason that has stood the test of time, is that it is a ginormous mainframe 10 point, about as clean as you could possibly get with a huge frame. Huge.
And he's just another. Milo Hansen was just a guy that was a deer.
Just another guy.
Mitch was a guy that was always wanting, credibility.
Yeah.
He was always wanting to further his credibility in the country as far as a deer hunter. He had it in Michigan for years and years.
Yeah.
And now I think he wanted to step up to that next level, and he was willing to do whatever it took.
And people still do it. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that Spook Spann killed that buck in Kansas and took it and said he claimed it in Tennessee as a Tennessee state record. And I'm sure there's other guys that have done. Well, we just talked about the guy who killed it in the high fence in Indiana and tried to pass it off in Kentucky. I mean, and that's a Lacey Act violation, right? That's a federal law break in those cases when you're moving those deer across state lines and stuff. But it's just, again, I think it goes back to that inner competition or that to that point. I mean, that's a disease to that point. To feel like you have to go and do these things to prove your worth in a community. It's you're hunting for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Well, there are quite a few of those guys, just like we talk about, TV personalities that have gotten, maybe they did love hunting at one point in time, but they got distracted by it's a business for them, and that they have to produce. I think in the same way, guys can get caught up in the scorebook side of things, where they're like, "Wow, I just I get my fulfillment, my notoriety, from being in the book for having killed a certain deer, and if they can find a way to."
Well, I think people do that now.
Manipulate.
I mean, look at many of these shows, whether it's TV, YouTube, whatever. How many people say, well, killed this 6-year-old buck? No, that's a 3-year-old. Like, clearly. Like, or I killed this 155. No, that deer's not an inch over 140. And without anybody laying the hands on it to actually verify, because these guys aren't submitting them to the books or anything. Like, it
Right.
just, and that, we've talked about the quality assurance check and content. Even though I don't think everything was accurate that came on hunting TV back in the day, the fact is there was still a quality assurance check when it hit the network. With YouTube and anybody being able to upload, there's misinformation delivered every day in the hunting community. Yeah, here's a good picture of a 7-year-old buck. What? No, that deer's 3, clearly, or younger. And I don't know if the guys say it because they want to convince you they're hunting this like majestic 7-year-old buck, or if they do it because they frankly just don't know.
They want it to be the case, is what it is.
And it's bad because
deer hunting is such an egotistical activity.
Yeah.
It is it drives your hunting or your ego.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of hunters in the country that are not ego driven, and they kill nice bucks and they keep it to themselves. They don't say squat to anybody. I definitely have an ego on the deer hunting side. But I try to educate hunters. I'm not out there trying to brag about what I've killed. I try to educate hunters to make them better hunters. I can remember we've got a magazine here called Woods and Water.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a guy on the cover, I think it was 2 years after we had full inclusion crossbow. And he was a scorer. He was a CBM scorer. And he shot 182-inch buck, typical. And he had it on the cover of Woods and Water. It was going to be the new state record crossbow kill, because obviously we hadn't even had a crossbow category until 2 years prior. And so his picture's on the cover, and he had one other buck with a bow is like 117 inches in the honorable mention part of CBM. And come to find out, he shot that buck in an enclosure with a muzzleloader.
Holy cow.
The guy that owned the enclosure actually called the president of Commemorative Bucks of Michigan and said, you know what? I own this enclosure. Enclosures get a bad rap all the time, and I don't like it. But the guy that's on the cover of that magazine that said he put that buck in the CBM, he shot that in my enclosure with a muzzleloader. I have a picture of him with that buck, and I have pictures of that buck in my enclosure. Mm-hmm. So I know the president of CBM, it was John Neville, and he actually had to go and kick the guy out of the book and go to his house, and he had to write a disclaimer. Just like I want to have a disclaimer to everything I said about Mitch or Kevin Gray. Some of that may be secondhand information. Most of it's personal information I know 100% to be true. Just so I don't get sued, though. I want to lay a disclaimer to that.
Well, yeah, and I mean, sued. And again, it goes back to that satisfaction. Like the fact that these guys are doing that kind of stuff, it is an empty void that you will never feel with satisfaction, right? If we go out there and
you're fake.
Yeah, we shoot a 4-year-old buck, or we shoot a high pressured public land whitetail. Like there is a satisfaction we feel, and we get to feel every year. That it's a great feeling. These guys have a void that will never ever be tamed. It just won't. And that's why they do these things that are so wrong. And they know it. It's just they can't help themselves. They're trying to figure out how to change their feeling in their life, and it won't work. It's a shortcut.
How to get more prestige.
Crazy.
I think no, we have to go all the way down this route, but you touched on it there briefly. And Jeremy and I have been talking a lot about trying to get to the root of inherently like what drives us to try to kill the biggest, oldest, highest scoring, like most sought after animal, whatever it is, deer or fish. Like, dude, I just think it's like primal, like it's in our DNA, like,
Oh, without a doubt.
Think back just to ancient civilization, like for us, just early Americans, they were Native Americans, not that I, was there for this, but I can imagine because I know how I feel. Dude, when they went and killed buffalo or whatever they were hunting, they came back and it was like the best warrior killed the biggest one, and they wanted to show it off, and they they wanted the notoriety that came from that. And dude, there's definitely something primal, or it's in our DNA as human. Yeah, I want to say men, but maybe it's women too. But
there also was an ideology there of like sustainability, in that like the Native Americans needed to hunt for food, but they knew that they couldn't abuse the resource, right? When frankly the white men showed up, they abused the resource, and that's why most things were extirpated in the United States from a wildlife side. And so those Native Americans knew that if they harvested that biggest, oldest, more mature male in the buffalo herd or whatever, there were younger ones that would then grow to fill that void.
You're saying that came from the Native Americans?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know if that's true.
And you're talking when the white people came in and they started just killing stuff, that was called market hunting.
Yeah, and they killed everything. There was no management.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, they were just killing to sell, to make money for profit.
It's funny. And my reference for that is like movies, and I don't know.
Yeah,
and that's one thing that when hunting actually started happening in the late 1800s, and they were trying to get rid of that stigma of market hunting, because market hunting was just total greed.
Sure.
They didn't care if they totally eliminated a species. It was all about money. That was their living.
Yeah.
So then when hunting started and they named it sport hunting, that created, as the years went on and you get into the anti-hunters and PETA, the word sport hunting kind of labels it as like basketball or baseball. You're doing it for fun.
Right.
And killing should never be labeled as a sport.
Mm-hmm.
They should have called it ethical hunting or something like that, because killing animals is not a sport. It's an activity, but it should never be labeled as a sport to be interfered with by people that don't hunt as something like it's basketball or football or something like that.
Yep.
So market hunting, they went right to sport hunting to people that were just hunting for leisure and for food and for fun. And I'm going to send you guys an article I wrote. If you promise me you'll read it.
Okay,
sure.
Pretty intense, but it's about that whole situation that we're talking about right now.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think it'd be a great one. And I guess
we'll read it out loud.
I bring that up because there is there's a lot of verticals in here. We obviously hit on the guy who intensely manages his property. We hit on the guy who really hunts for the challenge. In a past podcast, we talked about, unfortunately, a lot of outfitters in the whitetail community, I wouldn't say are necessarily market hunting, but they're damn close to it, right?
Getting the most money out of a resource.
They are maximizing a property and a resource. Yeah. It's a business for them, but they for sure are over hunting a herd. They're abusing it or at least taking such extreme measures on it that it could damage that herd long term. And so you see these buckets out there, and this is why people will say all the time, well, we don't want to be divisive about hunting. Listen, it's not anybody or any person saying anything to be divisive. It's the fact that naturally we are divided as hunters. Everybody does it for a different reason. Everybody kind of looks at it for a different purpose. And until you come to that realization, you're not going to come to the terms of the fact that as a group of hunters, we are divided. It's just, we are. We'll never be unified. We will never be unified.
Well, and that doesn't mean that we can't be unified on
certain grounds.
If it comes to issues that would threaten all of our right or ability to
PETA,
hunt.
Absolutely.
There are things we need
this
to all be on the same
article
page
I send
about.
you will touch on that.
Okay.
Big time. And it's very in-depth. And if you want to read it, you're more.
Is it more or less in depth than the scent lock?
What?
More or less in depth than the scent lock instructions?
It's less. It's probably 3 or 4 pages. I'm going to send you.
We could do that.
The short version. Well, on the scent lock documents, when I send that,
I'm just
all
busting
you
your
really
balls.
need to read is document 1 and 2. I sent 13 documents and some pictures of activated carbon with molecules bonded to it. But the rest of the stuff, I don't, to say just do this and you don't have to pay attention to it. You have to understand the technology.
Sure.
People spend $500-600 for Sitka, which is way overpriced gear for what it is. It's nice stuff, way overpriced, has zero technology whatsoever.
Yeah, we just bought a ton of it.
What?
I said, we just bought a ton of it.
Oh God!
Well, listen, John.
You'd be sponsored by it and get it for free.
We're not sponsored. We get a discount through Whitetail Properties, so we were just looking for an upgrade in apparel.
I just don't understand how people can buy so much super high priced gear that has zero technology, other than obviously windproof, waterproof. Maybe it has some, antimicrobial interior, which it's not touching your skin.
I mean, for my stuff, it's mainly I want it to fit well. I want it to be comfortable. I want it to keep me dry and warm.
You want a quality garment. You want quality of apparel.
Yep, that's what I pay.
Irregardless of scent technology.
Any technology other than that. Yeah.
It blows my mind that people don't take advantage of the scent technology. That boggles my mind. It's
a belief issue, 100%. I mean, if people believed, despite your best efforts to convince them, I realize you're fighting a good fight.
All you gotta do is try it and do it right. And
I think
believe.
I think a lot of people are just like, well, I can't possibly be true, and so they just kind of what's the word? They just like dismiss it.
Well, and unfortunately, because we wore scent lock for many years. And unfortunately, some of the garments that we got from they don't fit right. Like
this was years ago.
Years ago. Yeah, my crotch was at my knees. Like I can't. It doesn't.
Not in a good way.
Yeah, not in a good way. I'm not that black.
Their stuff is better now, and I would guarantee, because I've done a gazillion seminars.
Is your new suit out, John? Is it like available for sale?
It's out. In fact, the pants just came out. I think Monday or Tuesday.
Gotcha.
But anyway, that's another story. But to me, there's lots of people that have had scent lock and they didn't use it. If you don't use it properly, if you don't desorb it properly, if you don't care for it properly, if you don't store it properly, and if you don't use it properly with other stuff in conjunction with it, it's not going to work.
Right.
So, people that have used it in the past and it didn't work, I totally 100% understand that, because they didn't do it properly.
John,
they didn't do everything you needed to do.
I'm assuming you've got a fairly intimate knowledge of how the technology in scent lock works. Is that something that's fairly easily applied to another garment? Is it something that's proprietary to scent lock? Like, could somebody else make that technology?
No, they have the U.S. patent on it. Nobody else can use it without paying them a royalty.
Okay, and the patent is on the activated carbon?
Activated carbon, yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Interesting.
And they have not done a very good job of telling people how to properly use it.
Well, frankly, they battled scent blocker until eventually they acquired scent blocker. That battle lasted and probably drained a lot of resources, I'd have to imagine.
Well, scent blocker, when scent blocker came out, scent lock came out in 92. Scent blocker is owned by Robinson Industries, which also owns Scent Shield, which is the sprays.
Yep.
And when they came out with scent blocker, they used activated carbon, with scent lock owning the patent on it. Well, after a couple of years, scent lock sent them a cease and desist order. They refused to do that, so scent lock took them to court. They won that in a court, and they paid them a lot of money for all the suits they had sold up to that point. And then scent blocker actually licensed. They were paying scent lock around $800,000 to $1 million a year in royalties to use activated carbon.
Talk about coming back with your tail between your legs.
5 years, they decided to go to something different. So they went to this man-made stuff, which had some absorbent capacity, but it was nothing like activated carbon.
Is that when they pushed like the antimicrobial type stuff?
No, it was Trinity.
Trinity.
I remember that.
Yeah, I remember Trinity technology.
Yeah. And so then they just, once they went to Trinity, it just wasn't effective, and they started losing business. And finally, they ended up selling to Scent Lock. So now, Scent Blocker uses the same exact activated carbon liner that Scent Lock used for years. But Scent Lock clothing uses activated carbon plus treated carbon plus zeolite.
Got it.
So
that patent will expire
at some bit more absorbent
capacity. That patent will expire at some point, right?
20 years usually.
Well,
20 plus.
The patent on using just activated carbon has expired, but the patent on using carbon alloy with treated carbon and zeolite has not.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's one of those things that I think people just fail to realize, or frankly, they just ignore. Like they'll pay attention to it and wear whatever their buddies are wearing. I don't know.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with social media. I think
the marketing side.
Social media has guys on there that say it doesn't work because they've never done it effectively and never done it properly. And I think hunters typically tend to be pretty lazy, and they're like, well, if I just hunt like he does in a plaid shirt and blue jeans and a pair of sneakers, and he's killing big bucks, I can do that. And then they don't kill it because they're not hunting the same type of properties. So they just they still follow the guy because they like him or whoever it may be, and they just do that same method, even though they're not killing anything because they're not hunting in the same types of properties he is.
I mean,
I can remember doing a podcast in the name of the lone wolf guy, Andre DeQuisto, came up, and he had shot 580 inches on his property, 800 acres in Iowa. I think it was 800, something like that, and it came up that, well, he doesn't pay attention to scent. Well, it's the same deal as the Don Higgins. If you're on the property all the time, you're the only guy hunting 800 acres, and you're growing these deer, and you're out there, and they smell your odor, or they never get shot at till they get to be that 180 inches. Yeah, you don't have to pay attention to scent control. Just like the TV guys. So look how many guys on TV shoot monster bucks with no scent control whatsoever. But for guys that are working hard and hunting pressured areas where every little detail matters and helps your kill percentages over your lifespan of hunting, I just don't understand not using it.
Yeah.
It just blows.
It can't.
But it is what it is.
It can't help either, John, that you've got, essentially every, hundreds probably of different products in the hunting industry claiming to eliminate scent.
The ozone one was the one that I think fooled most people.
Yeah.
They bought into everybody bought into it hard. And then when you finally learn about ozone and you're like, wait a minute, I can't even breathe this stuff in without it like damaging me if it's at the right levels to destroy scent or cover whatever it does. You quickly realize, like, there's no way I can plug this thing in my truck and, like, survive.
I thought that was the craziest thing ever. That was the craziest.
You're right.
I would watch it. We joked about it. I won't name names, but I would watch people, like, using it in the blind and thinking their face was going to half melt off or something.
Bill Winky. I thought he was going to fall asleep. He's like, man, Bill's been looking awful dreary since that.
He's been taking a lot of naps in the rednecks.
Ever since that Ozonic sponsorship.
Yeah, but that was one. and I mean, I think we can all say that's kind of faded off now, right? I mean,
yes and no. There are still guys that are bought in on it.
But I don't think it's nearly as because I think Scent what the hell is the other? Scent Crusher has sold to Faradyne recently.
Okay. Well, and see, that's a gray area one because it's like, and I'm not a doctor. I've done the research, but like enough people have basically filled me in on the fact that like there is some validity to ozone technology. They use it to like sterilize surgery equipment and like it kills bacteria. That's
totally.
But it has to be at a level that literally you can't breathe in or it's going to damage your lungs.
And so that's why like the Scent Crusher approach, treating your clothes and your gear with that makes sense. Like I can see that working. But
I agree.
But in the field application where it's supposed to, a shower is supposed to cover your scent cone is like just unrealistic.
And people swear by it. And I have to believe it's just.
I've used it.
It's like
smell me.
I don't know if it's a false confidence or
100% it is.
Yeah, it's like a placebo effect.
Yeah.
Like they have it in place. And if they don't, they'll screw up a deer hunt because they don't have it in place because mentally they think that everything is going to go wrong.
100%.
Yeah, Ozone's interesting. They sent me 3 Ozone 6 machines when that first came out into the industry.
Yep.
And Ozone definitely works. It definitely kills bacteria, no doubt about it. But it also leaves a foreign odor.
Yeah,
sure.
Ozone leaves a foreign odor. So when you have one over your head and you're out west or you're hunting TV and micromanaged properties, deer accept a lot of things. They accept that. Man, oh man, you use that real high profile TV guy that I know. He was sponsored by Ozone and he's shot, 70, 80 open young bucks out of state on his TV show. And he owns 80 acres up here in Eberhart, Michigan. And he said the first time he used it in his property, and he said every year and a half and 2.5-year-old buck came in from downwind spook from it because it's a foreign odor to the location.
Well, check this out.
If we can smell it, I assume they smell it.
Well, check this out.
Absolutely.
Well, so
it's foreign.
Yes. So let's say in terms of like, if ozone is not eliminating scent altogether, it must be some kind of odor. We're saying it's foreign because and I would agree, it's produced by a machine. It's a foreign smell. the alternative would be, okay, if you're not going to eliminate smell completely, like something that I've done is I'll just like bask in, like my parents have a big wood burning stove outside that heats their home. I'll just smoke it up. Like I'm wafting my clothes in there. I get as smoky as I possibly can. And I know that obviously has a smell. I can smell it.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
But I think that it's not a foreign odor. I think there's, in the fall time, there's fires all the time. Them deer, smell campfires. They smell, wood burning stoves. And so I would prefer, and you and I are going to disagree on this, John, because like I don't think I can completely eliminate my human scent. I haven't been able to do it. So I would rather have not an unforeign smell, like the smell of smoke covering up, cover scent. It's not a new concept. I mean, I've had a lot of luck with smoking out.
That's definitely going to be better than having human odor without question.
And debatably, ozone odor is going to be better than ozone because that's a foreign smell as opposed to an unforeign.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Now ozone,
Settle
I
then.
think works. I think ozone works great for like treating your.
Yeah.
If I wasn't wearing scent lock, I would have no problem because I would never use ozone on my scent lock.
Great for putting the kids to bed, some stuff. settles them right
put that
down.
in there, and in the morning they're dead.
And they just start getting real groggy.
Yeah, for treating your clothing because the ozone odor does dissipate after a while, and it does eliminate all the human odor that was in it. So, but still, if you're wearing permeable clothing, as soon as you step out.
Yeah.
As soon as you get your clothes on, your human odors you're emitting are going to emit through the permeable fabric and going to be out into the open. And another thing I wanted to mention because, you talk about all these different scent things. I think sprays are the same way. Sodium bicarbonate is something you can definitely smell. And where I hunt in Michigan, every little detail matters. So if I quit using sprays years ago because I think I got winded because I had spray on my clothing.
What's in those, John? They're all a sodium bicarbonate, you said?
The only one that's would be dead downwind. They use an enzyme, but I think that also has sodium bicarbonate in it as well, which is nothing more than baking soda. Same stuff you put in your refrigerator to absorb odors out of your refrigerator.
Sure.
So it does have some odor absorbent capacity, but it has an odor as well, its own odor. And that, as far as antimicrobials, because you get a lot of clothing manufacturers, keep in mind, I'm a rough. I know all this stuff about clothing. Mm-hmm. When you put an antimicrobial in an exterior jacket on the interior of your exterior jacket, it's not touching your skin. For an antimicrobial to work, it has to touch your skin and come in contact with the bacteria to kill it. Okay. And it's like you have ants in your house, spraying the outside of your house to kill the ants inside. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So antimicrobials in a base garment or having silver or gold, like Scent Blocker does on their base garments. See, silver is a natural antimicrobial, and you can wash it a gazillion times, and it's still going to kill bacteria. Antimicrobial treatments are a treatment, and when you wash your clothes a few times, that treatment's gone.
Because that was what was that? Was that Under Armour who was the antimicrobial push on it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I think there's been a lot of other clothing companies that antimicrobial. Well, a lot of them do it on base garments.
Continue on with your sprays, because those are a big question mark for me. That's one where people are like, "Does it work or not?" I have no idea.
I get the biggest laugh out of watching a TV guy get out of this truck, go to the back of the pickup truck, put on his clothes, and then spritz down a spray like that's going to work. You notice they always still pay attention to wind direction?
Yeah.
Yeah, always. Yeah, sprays definitely 100% guarantee do not work at eliminating your human odor. No way. No way. Sodium bicarbonate has a very minimal amount of odor absorbent capacity. And also when you're spraying it on, as soon as it dries, a lot of that, the actual sodium bicarbonate is going to, just fluff off the suit, especially when you're walking through vegetation.
I think that probably the two main uses that I've still I clung to, I don't know, it's one of those things where it's like in my heart, like I know it doesn't work, but I'm like, it's like, man, if I don't do it, I don't know. It's like my boots and my hat, like the inside of my hat and like the outside of my boots, just being like, I don't know. Those are the things that, I don't know, seem right to spray.
Well, your boots are waterproof. Why would you spray the exterior of your boots if no odor is on them anyway?
Well, it's not human odor. It would be just other odor, like if they've come in contact with my truck or, that's the thought. I guess okay, I never thought about spray as, having to correlate specifically with human scent as much as just any scent.
Yeah. Well, I always view anything as a foreign odor is negative to me hunting. So my boots, I never wear my regular hunting boots, in anything other than a hunting scenario. Mm-hmm. So I don't really worry about the exterior. And when I buy a pair of new boots, I don't wear them hunting for 2 years. I let the exteriors. I put them out in the garage and let them air out for a couple of years.
And tell me I'm a lazy hunter because I probably deserve it, so that's fine.
No, I'm not going to tell you that.
Well, but and I'll just be honest with you here. So like, I start out pretty strong. First couple hunts out of the year, it's like, I dress outside the truck. I try to, but end of October, early November starts rolling around. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna rip over. Like I'm riding in the truck, and I know full well, like I've went to the gym and sweat on my car seat. You know what I'm saying? Like I know it's bad. I know it's bad, man. I know, and I definitely take the wind into account for that reason. 100%.
Yeah, I'm way more regimented than that. I stick to my guns all the time on that part.
So are you traveling to your hunting spot in street clothes, basically, John, and then?
Yes.
And I assume you wash your street clothes too.
No, I don't.
Oh, you son of a bitch! I got you. I got you there.
I do not. Well, once I put on my ScentLock exterior, I'm not worried about anything.
You're essentially keeping it. You're keeping it captured inside of those garments, John. That's
everything underneath is irrelevant.
Gotcha.
Got it.
So do you shower before you go out?
In the mornings I do not. In the evenings I do. In the mornings I just get out of bed and go on. Put on my street clothes because I don't hunt by my house. Drive to where I'm going, slide between the seats into the back, put on my ScentLock gloves. I take off my pants and shirt, and then I put on my ScentLock gloves, and then handle everything with my ScentLock gloves on when I'm putting on my ScentLock, my ScentLock pack, and my boots and stuff.
Interesting.
And then I just open the side door and go.
Well, I mean, I do take it serious. It's funny because, like...
Is it stored in a ScentLock bag?
Everything is stored in airtight containers, including my undergarments and all my rainwear. Everything is in airtight containers. Everything. Even my underwear.
So when you say airtight containers, are you talking like a plastic tote, or is it something specialized?
It's a plastic tote.
Okay. Vacuum sealed.
With a rubber seal on it. It's not like the Sterilites and Rubbermaid stuff.
Yeah.
Walmart for $8. It's the actual $40, $50. Plano makes them. Hunter Specialty makes them.
Yep. We have some of those.
Iris makes them.
Do you ever have any issues when you come back from a hunt? Let's say you're hunting and it rains and your garments are wet. What's the process there? Because you're not probably throwing them right in the tote wet, are you?
I put them in a plastic bag. Okay. I got the plastic bags in the back, and then when I get home, I dry them. I don't wash by ScentLock. It just gets absorbed prior.
Because the carbon is activated via the heat cycle, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
That's what deabsorbs it's not reactivated. You can't reactivate the carbon in a ScentLock suit.
Okay.
Reactivating means you bring it back to its pristine state when it was originally
Which is not possible.
Yeah, it's 1,450 degrees plus Fahrenheit under pressure.
Yeah.
So all the dryer does is it deabsorbs it. It removes the majority of the molecules off the carbon pores. And then over time, those molecules that it doesn't, deabsorb from over about an 8 to 10 year period, it gets to the point where it's kind of compromised.
Got it.
But every time you deabsorb it, it gets rid of a ton of those molecules. It opens the pores up so it can absorb more.
That's not control.
I've lost you guys.
No. I'm with you.
I feel like John's gonna be disappointed when we're drinking coffee and eating Casey's breakfast pizza in our hunting suits before we go out.
We'll take our ozonics. That'll be fine.
I have no problem with that.
No,
the thing I really cut out is pungent food, like garlics and onions, because I permeate that. Bad.
Yeah.
Coming out of my body.
I think it's just the thought of how easily a scent regimen can go wrong.
Oh, very. I would say that most people listening at this don't have as good a scent regimen as they think. I don't.
Yeah.
I know it.
Well, because it's like, first of all, we don't know. We think we know what works, but it's so influenced by marketing or our perceived experience. And so, like, for me at this point, I wash at the beginning of the season at a bare minimum. I wash everything possible. Like, so for this elk hunt, I washed my sleeping bag, my towels, my pillowcase, anything that I'm going to be, having a lot of contact with, and obviously my clothes and my pack, everything fabric that I can fit into the washer, I do that. But inevitably, on the elk hunt, I'll be in contact with a horse, and, we're not be able to shower like morning and night, like as often as you would be. And when it comes to deer hunting, it's like, man, whether I get on the e-bike and the seat has some scent, or I get in my truck, and that obviously, it's so easily tainted, and it's just like, it can be overwhelming to try to keep up with.
John, are you concerned at all?
You know what?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, John.
Well, I was just going to say, the process of being scent free is all it's just like hunting. All of your hunting revolves around how well you are prepared, how well you prepped your locations, how well you scouted. If you've done all that correctly, you're probably going to kill something if you're on an area where you got a couple nice bucks. Scent control is the same deal. It's all in how well you keep your clothing prepared. Once my vehicle stops, I slide between the seats, take off my pants, take off my shirt, put on my base garments, throw on my jacket, throw on my pants, grab my backpack out of its airtight tote, grab my bow, and I'm out the door. I'll be out of the door, I 100% guarantee, quicker than either one of you if we park behind each other at the same moment. So it's all in the preparation stage. It has nothing to do with, once you get to your spot, how long it takes you to prepare to go walk into the field.
Maybe last question here on the scent stuff.
It's all in the
what do you do with, like, I don't know how to say it, orifices on your face, nose, mouth?
That's all covered with a head cover and drop out face. 40% of your odor comes out of your head.
Yeah.
So that's the thing most scent lock guys don't do, is they don't put their head cover on. Sure. I'm not talking about ball cap like you guys have, because now you got hair sticking out.
Yeah.
A huge amount of odor comes out of your hair follicle.
I know.
You got to have your nose covered, your mouth covered, your ears covered, back of your hair, your neck. It tucks down in here. So you got a face cover, and the only thing you expose is your eyes. And then when you go to take a shot with a release, you just, reach up and pull it down under your chin and then pull back so it doesn't hamper your anchor point and take your shot.
And so it's not, it's not like a filtering mask. It's literally, you're trying to contain.
Oh yeah, it's got carbon in it. It's
okay.
The mask you're wearing is a scent lock head cover with it, and it's got a drop down face mask, so it covers everything except your beady little eyes.
Gotcha.
John, are you concerned, I guess past the scent piece, at all with UV on apparel and clothing?
Or the hex stuff, the electro radial.
Yeah.
You've heard of this? You know what the hex stuff is?
Yeah, I've heard. I don't know much about it. I have talked to guys that used it, though, that got winded. They were scent lock guys, and they just wanted to try it, just so they could intelligently speak about it, and then they got winded with the hex stuff. So.
Well, it's not. I don't think it has anything to do with scent. It's like what hex. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I thought it had to do with scent.
No. It has to do with like
the electromagnetic
fields of people.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with wind, which I guess could be their out. Well, you got winded, not detected.
So what's its function? To not pay attention to wind?
They think so. I think they're marketing, and I think they're still in business. But basically, it's like, have you ever know when a big buck just knows you're there? Even if he's upwind, that's your electromagnetic field. Like, you're putting off an energy that the hex garments are claimed to be able to like contain.
Yeah.
Well, I apologize, because I thought it was something to do with scent, and the guy said you got winded when they used it.
Yeah.
As far as the electromagnetic field, I would put absolutely zero into that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've never seen a deer react to my electromagnetic field around.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a stretch, Pete. The UV in deer vision has been one that I've always kind of paid attention to, because if you ever take a black light to a hunting garment, there's certain ones that are very dull. There's other ones that light up like the 4th of July, and
a lot of semen.
They light up big time. They got cotton. Most of the polyester stuff does.
Yeah.
And most suits are made out of polyester anymore. Very few are made out of cotton.
Yeah. And so that was
cotton. Yeah.
That was a big one that came out and was kind of like, whoa, how do you do that?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's when, I don't know, who makes the sport wash, just a little white bottle.
Snow Seal.
Is it Snow Seal?
Esco.
Yeah.
Yeah, Esco.
And
Yeah.
also
Makes Snow
Yeah,
Seal.
because that was one where, those guys I don't know necessarily were marketing to us as hunters, but became very popular for that UV deterrent type detergent.
That product has always, because the packaging is so terrible. Like, it just looks like such a B product, but it's hilarious, like how much,
And again,
just word of mouth.
I don't know how much that actually works. Like, I do know that UV is
That's what
a
I
big
use.
thing
That's
to
the
deal
detergent
with.
I have.
But whether it actually does something or not, I don't know.
On cotton, it makes a difference. I mean, I when I shot leaks and back in some of the dart systems and stuff, they had black lights.
Yep.
In the actual room, and boy, if a guy walked in there with a cotton T-shirt on, he glowed.
Yeah. That
if he had washed it quite a few times.
Yeah. Interesting.
Polyester doesn't cave to that like cotton.
Always learning something new from Mr. Eberhart. It's just the way we are. Just young.
Well, I've been in the rag industry for years.
Yeah. Well, you've seen it, man, and it's evolved. And the unfortunate thing is there are plenty of gimmicks out there. And ultimately everybody's going to find something that they feel secure in or comfortable in or believe in. And, I think that confidence, often will yield, success.
Results.
Tenderloins, as your uncle would say.
Confidence has a lot to do with it. What you have confidence in means a lot.
Yeah.
Did I tell John my uncle's little adage there?
I don't remember if he did.
If I didn't, I'll get it to you. My uncle, who you would really get along with my uncle well. You guys have a lot of similar ways that you think about things. He says, a little bit of baking soda to the arse and groin will often yield the tenderloin.
Arse and groin.
That'll do it. Something to live by.
Oh my God. I've been watching these commercials on TV now where this woman is actually talking about putting stuff up her butt crack to get rid of the old.
Wow.
That's on regular TV.
What kind of TV channels are you watching?
He's like, it's these high number ones late at night. I don't get it.
555. 55.
Oh, man.
Oh my God.
Well, listen, John, we appreciate you coming on and getting you before the season. We look forward to kind of how the season goes for you, and hopefully we'll be able to grab you at some point later this fall and kind of recap what you saw and keep educating us on it. It's always a true pleasure, man, to have you on. We really feel lucky to bring you in and share your wisdom with us, and just to share passionate talks with somebody else who really enjoys bow hunting, at a core level is, something that we always just find ourselves attracted to. So,
Can I throw a plug in there about my saddle hunters?
do it.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Price point wise, with 20% discount, there is it's online only, and the 20% discount is SADDLE 20.
Saddle 20.
That'll get you a 20% discount, and that's $159 for the jacket or the pant. And the jacket is, I designed it. It's got 100 grams of insulate in the body, 80 grams in the arms. It's got a polyurethane membrane, so it's windproof. They're overlapped and sewn, so it's damn near waterproof. It's got a 180 fleece exterior, a 180 fleece interior. So it's not an overly bulky suit.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I want that 180 fleece exterior to mask the noise of the polyurethane membrane. It's got a really short collar, damn near no collar in the front, but it goes up under your ears. It's 3 inches tall in the back to block the wind. It's got a shirt tail hem in the back, which is, I think I started that whole design on shirt tail hems back in 2005 when I designed a Rivers West garment. And it's designed for saddle hunters, so the pockets on the jacket are up higher so you can get into them, because regular slash pockets on a regular jacket are low enough where you can't get into them when you're in your saddle.
Right.
The saddle kind of covers them a little bit. And then on the pants have built-in knee pads. Oh, the jacket also has a slot in the back so a regular hunter can use it.
Harness.
Hunting it.
Mm-hmm.
The pants have built-in knee pads. It has a rise in the back of the pant to help overlap that back so you don't get any wind up in there. And it has a quick draw on the front where you just grab a tag in, a quick adjust on the front. So you just zip your pants up, pull on that, and it's tight. So you don't have to have a belt. It does have belt loops. It does not have pockets in the rear, because when you're in a saddle, you don't have any use for rear pockets. It's got leg pockets, pockets up at the top, and then it has a 2-way zipper, so you can zip it from the bottom up or the top down on your fly. And it's designed for rut phase hunting. 60+% of the bucks entered in the P&Y book, and I've done that research for 20 years, are shot during the rut phases.
Mm-hmm.
So rut phase hunts in the Midwest and in the Northeast, typically you're looking at, 20 to 40 degree weather, 45 maybe. And so that's what this suit is designed for. It's designed for rut phase hunting, but it's not bulky. Most suits you get for cold weather, they're just super bulky. And I like to layer underneath stuff on an as-need basis and not overheat on my entries. So it's very well designed. And again, it has a carbon alloy liner. So it's, got all the sun protection.
Is that, so they're buying that directly from scentlock.com right now?
Correct.
Got it. Perfect.
Go get you some.
Yeah. And Tethered's still carrying the Eberhart signature saddle?
They are.
There you go.
Yes. Yeah.
So those are your two stops if you're listening to this. And
I've got one of those. I went back to Tethered and I bought all the, what do they call them? Linemans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Linemen and the tree tether.
You got the carabiner and everything too.
Well, yeah. What's the little gold guy that instead of a preset knot?
Rope man.
Rope man. I bought 2 of those. I bought one for my belt and also my line.
I think I modified this ESS for you two guys.
You did.
We're not exactly street legal.
Yeah. you may have pulled the restrictor plates off of ours. You might
so if
say.
you hear about that.
It makes it easier to use.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
sure.
Awesome, John. Well, we appreciate it, man. If anybody's listening to this, check out John's new suit at scentlock.com and the Eberhart saddle at tether.com. And, well, I'm sure we'll be yanking on Mr. Eberhart's ear at some point this fall and pull him back in.
Anytime, man.
Cool.
Anytime, and good luck to you guys and everybody else out there. Even you guys in the South.
Yeah, even the Southern guys.
Even you guys.
You start October 1st, John? Is that opening day?
Yeah.
And are you you're a go at it opening day, right? I mean, you're diving in.
Oh
hard.
yeah. I did a speed tour yesterday. I went to do a speed tour and put out some cameras, and I ended up finding about 18 oaks back in the swamp of marsh grass, and I ended up going back in my vehicle and getting stuff and prepping a new tree too.
You think that might be an opening day set for you?
No, because there's 2 guys that hunt this property, and they walk the edge of the swamp on opening morning at just about the crack of daylight. So if I hunt back in the swamp, they push everything beyond me. Yeah. Because this is like 100 yards into the swamp. They push everything back in farther. I've hunted there 2 times opening morning before, and both times they come through there with their bright ass headlamps and spook everything back in.
Yeah.
Son of a bitch. If that's you
I
listening
just did 2 videos on headlamps and reflective markers. I don't have much good to say about headlamps.
I like it. Well, cool, John. We appreciate it, man, and we'll catch up with you later this fall.
Okay, thank you. Good luck, guys.
Thanks, sir.
All right. Bye-bye.
Awesome. John, always good to have on. We covered a lot there. That was a long one. If you're still listening to this, it's like late in the game. It's like 3 hours in.
Oh, yeah.
So, but no, cool. I mean, some really critical points. Obviously, I wanted to pull that Mitch Rumpola piece out, but I think his scent control, I don't know. I'm not defeated on it. It just is a lot. And frankly, I know that I'm sloppy at it. So
John's a lot in a good way.
Yeah.
The best way possible.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, first of all, and no knock on his age. Like, I hope when I'm his age, I have that fire still. Because that dude is just, like, rearing to go.
Well, we didn't even touch on it, I don't think. But, his shoulder issues are, he's having to continually decrease weight. Like, he's down to,
40 pounds.
40 pounds on his bow.
Mm-hmm.
So to all you crossbow switcheroos.
Yeah. He's like,
it's possible.
That's a giant middle finger to it. And so,
he just loves it, and so he's just trying to stretch it out as long as he can, which I admire.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear him, and John's he's super confident in what he does, and I'm sure I twitched a little bit as he talked about the Higgins stuff, but like, it's just because he is very sure of what he does and how he does it. And, I'm sure there are some people out there that, hunt very managed setups that if you dropped them onto, a piece of public that they wouldn't be able to, kill themselves out of a wet paper bag.
Well, differing opinions, even strong ones like John's, and they are strong, it doesn't mean that they're bad guys. You just see something a different way, and you're adamant. You've seen success maybe personally, and like, it can be natural to be like, well, F that guy. Like, I'm not going to listen to that.
I do love hearing him. Like, he is purely 125 or bigger. Mm-hmm. I don't care if it's a 2-year-old. I don't care if it's an 8-year-old. 125 or bigger. Mm-hmm. Like, and part of me appreciates that because it's a little simpler. In that, like, the age game is tough. I mean, how many times a day do you and I probably send pictures to each other and we're like 3 or 4?
Well, it's simpler. It's a simpler way to look at it. You could make the argument also that it's a less, like, what would be the opposite of simple? Harder, but in a good way. Like, it's more dynamic. Yeah. It's more thoughtful to consider the age of an animal and the potential it has to display over years of its life.
And I think that's, again, a situational thing because he can't think of age in a place like public where he can't control the age structure versus private land management, which in some cases we can.
Sure.
So he has to then say, well, what's the best I can do? It's probably based on score. Now, again, I'm sure if he's hunting the same area and there's a 2-year-old 125 and a 4-year-old 125, I have to believe he shoots the 4-year-old 125. I think he will.
0. None whatsoever is what he told us.
I think he cares somewhat.
I don't think he does, man. I think it's Pope and Young.
Maybe.
It's hard for us to get over because that age is so important to us.
And it was not always important to me. Like, I mean, there was plenty of time where it was big rack or points or whatever, and then at some point, and maybe that's the management brain. So if you only hunt public land, maybe age means nothing to you.
It is. It's the management, but it's also...
I'd be interested in hearing for people because I know there's a lot of people that just hunt public land listening to this. Like, does age matter? Or are you literally trying to kill just a big buck?
Right. Well, and it's not as black and white as size is the only thing that matters. Age is the only thing that matters.
Thank God.
They both matter independently, or you could make the argument that they do, but I think for a lot of, age-oriented guys, it's because of their ability to produce inches of antler at a certain age class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's an interesting thing because, like, part of me thinks it's attractive to think, man, if I just said, I just want to kill a Pope and Young buck every year, kill a lot of freaking deer, man. I'd be whacking and stacking.
I've passed so many 3-year-olds. It's sick.
I would be stacking. And I don't say that in an arrogant way. I'm just, there's a lot of opportunities to kill P and Y deer every year.
Yeah.
And normally they're
not bragging. We're just like the states, in the spots to do it,
but normally it's because, and I don't shoot them because they're 3 or younger.
Right.
And that's that evolution to where I want to kill. And for me, and I know we're the same, but a little different on this. Like, I really get a kick every year of going after an individual.
Yeah.
Like, when I find that buck that I want to kill, it may be in one of the 3 states that I hunt. Yeah. Like, I am sick over that deer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just kind of the way I like to hunt. I probably miss a lot of opportunities on other 4-year-old bucks I could shoot, but I don't know. I kind of like that one-on-one battle a little bit.
I'm more of an opportunist. Dude, I feel so strongly about, and this is, I don't know, maybe just dumb. Like, if I was faced with a situation where the best that I could do is 125, like that's the best.
That's the biggest, baddest buck in the area.
I'd leave.
Well, that's what I'm saying earlier.
I would go hunt somewhere where
So, like, I'm kind of situated.
And he is. I mean, that's why he goes to Kansas.
Yeah, I'm kind of situated with that in Pennsylvania right now. Like, I'm going to kill a Pennsylvania buck.
Leave as in live somewhere else. But my hunting would take place primarily where that's possible.
The places I have 9 or 10 cell cameras out in Pennsylvania right now. I do not have a buck that I want to shoot on camera in Pennsylvania right now. I do not. I'm not saying that he won't show up. I just don't have one. At some point in September, I'm going to make the move to start going to find a buck that I will want to hunt. and I'll do that for at least a little while until at some point I have to balance my efforts between trying to find a buck in Pennsylvania and hunting a buck in Ohio or Kentucky that I want to kill. But I and I've got openly, 1,100 acres of Pennsylvania ground to kill. I don't have a buck on there that I want to shoot, so I'm going to go to public probably. And eventually we're hunting with Steve Shirk up north, which he's got bucks we'll kill. I just don't know where or what. We have no connection to it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you just have to figure out what you want to do. And I think that it all depends on what your expectations are. But yeah, I mean, there's, maybe if I want to kill a buck in Pennsylvania this year, I have to shoot a 3-year-old.
I think, let me clarify what I said on the 125 thing. Like, it's not that there's anything wrong with 125 inches at all. I have done and I will in the future shoot mature bucks that are of that score class.
Yep.
I think for me, what's disappointing is, like, regardless of the location, knowing that a 2 or 3-year-old buck is not showing its full potential, that to me is takes away from the experience. So even if the oldest that a deer can get in an area is 2 or 3, if I go and kill him, knowing that, man, that's the biggest, oldest buck in here, it still is disappointing to me that animal didn't get to show its maximum potential.
Even knowing that he likely, because you never know 100%, but likely he wouldn't have made it. And I think that's where the public land guys and being a public land hunter for a long time, like, that was the first 4-year-old buck I killed on public land. That was in Missouri. Being like, I've had that fight of like, I'm like, why not shoot that 3-year-old? Because there isn't a 4-year-old I'm going to kill that I've seen or that I know about, and yes, I'd like to get him to 4, but like, he probably won't. So that's kind of the battle.
And I'm not saying that John or anybody is wrong. Like, that's, you got to work with the hand that you've got dealt. I just personally find it, it doesn't, like, I don't feel good about killing an animal knowing that it's tough, man. It's, I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's also stages of the career. What have you harvested in the past? Like, if you've never killed a buck over 120, then yeah, you're going to kill that 125 3-year-old.
Well, and I feel like I've been there. I've been there when guys have killed nice 2-year-old deer and even 3-year-old deer. And there's no animosity towards the hunter. Like, I'm not like, oh dude, you ruined my opportunity. Or there maybe at one time I felt that way, but that was, pretty immature of me. At this point, I just feel it's a shame.
Well, I think that it's the
not that the hunter should be ashamed. It's
no.
It's a bummer for me that deer didn't live to see his full potential.
See, I would have to hear it in context more, right? Because let's say a guy's been bow hunting for 10 years, he's never killed a buck or killed a couple small bucks, kills that 2-year-old 120. I'm happy for him. Sure. I think he's happy.
It can be both things.
There are people though who I think every year hunt and just kill 1 and 2-year-olds, 1 and 2-year-olds, and at some point, maybe they're happy. Me personally, how I am as a human, I question, why haven't you tried to do better?
Yeah.
Why haven't you tried to challenge yourself further?
It's less of our, I agree. I agree with what you're saying. I feel it's less of our place to judge why people hunt. I mean, that's what makes it so great.
And I'm not, that's why I said I have to understand it in context, but it's just like, if you complain to me...
Even in context, though, I mean, people are different. Like, there are people that that's what they want to do, and that's...
I don't think it is, though. I think that they convince themselves they want to do that. It's just like their job. If they go to a job 8 to 4 every day and they're miserable, change. And if you tell me you can't change, you're not trying. That is the world we live in. I understand you have to pay bills, right? But you can figure something else out. You can look for another job. You can attempt to get another job. Ultimately... If you're miserable at what you're doing, or you're not happy, or you're telling yourself this is the best you can ever do, and you haven't challenged yourself, that's a personal issue. And you can fix that. You can get out of that. You can change your life. You can do better. So I question that in context. If somebody is just wanting to kill a buck every year, I don't think that they like to hunt as much as they think they do.
Sure. That's fair. That's fair. But there are guys out there that just, it's priorities. You know what I mean? Some people have obligations, responsibilities like that. Just they keep them out of the woods. Maybe they have, like you said, in context, maybe they haven't been able to get out in 2 years. In
a weird way, I like hunting so much, I don't want to shoot a buck first day because I don't want to be done.
No, I understand that.
That's why we have other states to hunt. Like, it's just, again, I'm not picking on anyone there. It's just at some point, if you kill a bunch of 1 and 2 year olds, especially if there's the opportunity to do bigger and do better, why haven't you have to ask yourself, why haven't you challenged yourself to pass a 2-year-old?
Well, the question
it's
is,
not the end of the year.
What is better? Because it's not everybody's goal to kill a big buck. I don't think.
But there's not a person listening to this thing that doesn't step into a tree stand or a blind and say, and imagine and daydream of a giant buck coming out.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, they might not be listening, but they're out there. And that's
why do they do it then?
Meat.
I don't think meat's a legitimate answer. I mean, given I eat a lot of deer meat every year.
Yeah.
I don't think that there are, or I won't say that there aren't any. There are very few that hunt purely for a sustenance reason now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a huge number, but I definitely think they're out there.
Not many. I think people.
I don't want to speak for her, but Outdoor Alley is one of those people.
Yeah, but she doesn't need to kill to survive.
Well, I'm not saying they need to kill to
That's
survive.
what I'm saying. Sustenance of I want to kill to I can't afford groceries.
Yeah, preference over necessity but that's kind of irrelevant here.
Which is what I would eat deer meat over beef most days.
I wouldn't.
See, I would.
Why?
I just like it. I know where it comes from. It's lean.
Yeah. Okay.
I like that aspect of it. But I don't need the deer. I could go out and buy meat.
Right. But you're also a diehard bow hunter trying to hunt mature bucks.
Sure.
So it's an added benefit.
But I'm going to kill a doe, or somebody, if the kids don't kill a doe, I will smack a doe early just so I have fresh deer meat.
Yeah. And what I'm saying is there definitely are people out there that hunt once or twice a year for meat because it's their preference that they have an organic food source. 100%.
Do you only hunt once or twice a year, though, if you're really wanting that meat?
I don't know.
That's my question.
If you get the meat in 1 or 2 hunts, then yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird.
I get what you're saying.
It's
hard because we're so invested in the pursuit of
and I'm not saying don't challenge. Well, but here would be my counter to that. Then don't shoot a 1-year-old buck. Shoot a doe.
Yes, but it's irrelevant to them. Well, I see what you're saying. It would be to our benefit that they would shoot a doe, so that those bucks are left, so that we can achieve our goal as well.
You're saying they shoot a buck just to say I shot a buck. And to get
I think
it's
irrelevant for those people we're talking about. I don't think it matters.
I don't care if it's a buck or a doe. First brown down.
Yeah. Whatever's legal, whatever has adequate meat.
See, I've heard a lot of people say I shoot a buck just to say because I want to shoot a buck. I want to say that I killed a buck.
Yeah, that happens too. I'm sure. A lot of layers, man. That's what's.
I'm peeling them out. I'm going down the onion route. At some point, you guys will make me cry, but you like that, Nick? That was pretty good.
That was good. That was.
All right, we're done.
All right,
we're deep into this one. 93, John Eberhart. It is almost October if you're listening to this, or maybe it is October if you're listening to this. I don't know. And it's hunting season, so enjoy it, regardless of why you hunt. See, I brought everybody together at the end there.
I feel pretty warm inside.
Did my make you cry?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see you next week.
Later.
Take me on down the